This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at thebatmanuniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
What?
I don't know. It's just interesting how you picked up. Are you on a phone?
Oh, can you hear? No, I'm on my headset.
Oh, okay.
But like my the headset, like, you know, kind of like speaker stick was like up, so I just like moved it down towards my mouth.
Okay.
And it's just like you greet me as I left you last night, just like laughing.
I know. Why do you think the pages were sticky?
Let's not answer that. It's too early on a Sunday morning for this kind of travesty.
Oh man. Well, hello. Good to hear your voice.
Oh, it's good to hear. Oh, yeah, because you didn't last night. It's good to hear your voice, too. You came in loud. And seriously, I was, like, swimming around. I was like, all right, where do I go? And then I hear...
I know. Oh, man. I was trying not to, like, distract, but it's when I just kept seeing you shoving Ellie. And then Ellie said, like, yeah, take all day. I love being on this. I was like, oh, my gosh. That's the commentary right there. Oh, gosh. That was great. I'm great.
Glad you enjoyed that. If you weren't on there, I would genuinely, like, just go online. I was like, okay, where do I go?
Oh, yeah. It all worked out for the best.
Yeah, that was fun.
Man. But it stunk because I just needed like 5 more minutes to be with you when that cutscene happened because I knew it was going to happen. It was so close. Oh, boy. How'd you feel when all that went down?
I like the moment at the end of the sniper part where you see them getting attacked and like, Sam, are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. I was like, yeah, he's not fine. And I actually didn't like click on this until like, you know, after I turned the game off, where like he was talking to Ellie about do you think these zombies have souls and stuff?
Yeah.
And like, oh, I see what they did there. But I kind of figured he was going to get like bitten. But I didn't see like the immediate like Henry just like shooting himself. I was like, not that it wasn't like a complete surprise, but it was just like, oh, that all happened very quickly.
Yeah. And especially because the conversations before, you know, like they were actually having a pretty nice time with the exception of Sam. Because Sam knew what was going to happen, but just like it was just like this wonderful moment in the midst of all this terrible stuff that they had just been through. And then for it to just tank right off the bat or right after that was, hard. So, whew.
Yeah, this game is very well written because I like how it's like, with the way that they write the characters, it's just when you think that like you start to think of other things, it's like, you know, things just kind of snap back, and I thought that was really well done. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. See, Harold and I wouldn't have made you do this if, you know, there weren't a good reason.
Oh yeah, no, you guys always have reasons. Whether I agree with them, I don't think Harry showed me anything that I've not liked yet. And your only ding is like irregular high school. But like that was like years ago, so that almost doesn't count.
Oh boy. Well, what about Old Boy? Isn't that what it's called?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I like that, but like, I guess I don't like that. I like that.
Okay. Just trying to see if there's a dig against Harry.
Gotham City, like any other large metropolis, abounds in girls of all shapes and sizes. Debutantes, nurses, stenographers, and librarians.
Gotham City Library, Miss Gordon speaking.
Lopez hair removal. This is Jose.
Holy transformation. 1 minute, plain Barbara Gordon, librarian and Commissioner Gordon's daughter. And the next minute, something new has been added. Batgirl, modeled after her idol, Batman.
Holy apparition! No, Boy Wonder, I'm Batgirl. You are no longer alone, Capes Crusaders.
It took me 3 years to track down the Jade Gato, and 3 more to figure out how to steal it.
funny. It only took me 10 minutes to figure out how to snatch it back. No matter how you do it, crime doesn't pay girls.
By
Tell me his name again.
Thanos.
I think I shall call him Adam.
But return to me again empty-handed, and I will bathe the stowaways in your blood.
Thanks, Dad. Sounds fair.
Korvac's power grows, as does his madness. He would have destroyed us all, had I not pulled us into the Soul Gem.
Then Thanos, I'm coming for you.
After Xandar, you were going to kill my father?
You dare to oppose me?
You see what he has turned me into. You kill him, I will help you destroy 1,000 planets.
It's all right, Adam. We're here to help. Just stay cool. I don't want to be here!
Resurrections, an Adam Warlock and Thanos podcast. 5 years and going strong. Every other week. Mostly. For all of your Adam Warlock, Thanos, or Marvel Cosmic needs. Find it on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, and wherever else podcasts are available. ResurrectionsAdamWarlock.tumblr.com.
Adam Warlock. You cannot keep leaving your philosophy books open on the floor. I always trip on them in the middle of the night on my way to the can.
Batgirl the Oracle is also brought to you by MileHighComics.com, your new and collectible comic book store. Mile High Comics has an inventory of over 5 million comics from the gold, silver, bronze, and modern age, and over 100,000 trade paperbacks. If you're not into the vintage stock, Mile High Comics also has a subscription service called the New Issue Comics Express, offering a discounted price for comics ready to hit the shelves. So if you're looking for vintage back issues or a great modern subscription service, be sure to check out MileHighComics.com. And I do know that Mile High Comics is currently not doing a New Issue Comics Express, given the whole diamond situation. But I do believe you can still get trade paperbacks and vintage issues as well. But yeah, I remember getting an email, which is a whole thing. Yeah, we can talk about that after our break. We can talk about kind of the current comic world. But with me today, I should have actually looked this up before I started the call, but probably maybe 400 miles away from me. So we are practicing proper social distancing. He made it, people. He made it. As he said, he's at the doghouse. So with me today is my good friend, Donovan Morgan Grant.
They said it couldn't be done. You said it couldn't be done, but I done did it.
Man alive. Well, it only took, I mean, the literal fire that I lit under your butt, of course, was this storyline that we're going to cover. So I think if it were anything else, you wouldn't have been as nervous for losing your seat on the show.
Yeah, it's true. If it was like, I don't know, Emperor Joker or something like that, I'd have been like, meh, you can bring in Shaq for that.
Oh, but here you are. Yeah, so Donovan, he has not beaten the game, but Harold and I discussed what would be a fair place for him to get to. And about halfway through is getting to Tommy's Dam, which this means nothing to anyone who's not played the game. So I thought that'll be a good spot for him. And last I checked in on him, and he makes me nervous, Donovan does, because I check I'm not a stalker, but I check how often he's online to see, and, saw those days tick up, but he was making his way. I knew he was in Pittsburgh. And then, miracle of miracles, he was on last night. I had just watched the latest episode of the Clone Wars and checked in to see if he was there. And he was playing, and so I thought I should ask if I can watch him play. And then hilarity ensued. It literally made my night. I just had such a fun time. You wouldn't think watching someone play a game on, distantly would be a lot of fun, but it actually really was. And I had my headset and mic so I could talk to him, but it was one-sided, so I could also, if I wanted to, laugh uncontrollably, which did happen, but only for the first 5 minutes.
Oh, come on. No, he laughed like every 5 minutes.
I don't think that was true, but he was pushing Ellie around on a pallet in the sewers, and he was trying to put her places that she didn't want to go. And after I controlled myself, I did help him get out of that situation. But no, it was fun. I want to tell you about this guy's play style, because it's like balls to the wall, man. I mean, he's using his bare fists to take down clickers. He runs down the middle of the street when there's a sniper shooting at him. I mean, it's an unconventional playing style, but he gets stuff done. So I was very proud of Donovan and how he played.
Oh, I appreciate that. I mean, I had no choice, because sometimes when I do go days without playing, like some of the controls can kind of like feel a little foreign to me. Not so much last night, but when the clickers show up, I get a little desperate and just I'm like, get off of me and stuff.
Yeah, good thing you've got Shiv handy. It's always good to have one or two of those. How is it playing? Because I was waiting to play until The Last of Us 2 was about to be released. I was going to replay it. But watching you has sparked a desire to play it sooner, because Last of Us 2 is now indefinitely delayed, which is really disappointing.
Very sorry about that.
Yeah. But what does it feel like playing it now? Because you actually started before the coronavirus outbreak. I mean, it was there, obviously, but before it got to the point where it is now, versus playing it now. I mean, has anything shifted for you? Because it's less fantasy, and I'll talk about me playing Resident Evil, but do you feel like anything like, oh, this is a bit actually uncomfortable now playing this game?
Well, I mean, I gotta say, I don't know if I'm ever going to talk about this. I really just don't know, and I'm not trying to hint or imply anything. I don't know when next I'll talk about this on a recorded audio. This is not the usual game that I would play. I'm not a zombie guy, and I'm not really. I don't think I've ever played like from getting to end a survival horror game. I've not played the Silent Hills and stuff. I've seen people play it, but I've not done it myself. The closest, I will say, the closest relative in terms of gameplay that this has for me is Metal Gear Solid, which incorporates a lot of stealth tactics. It incorporates a lot of tactical fighting and using tools and utilizing weapons and stuff. And so I'm kind of connected to it on that end. But in terms of the virus element, when I start seeing things like, there's a fake background, people used to take pictures in front of it. Oh, there's an ice cream truck. People used to deliver ice cream. Oh, here's a picture of a model. People used to not eat so they get skinny. And I'm like, this better not be us from a year from now. That would be a little too real, because it was this and the Batman story Contagion are the two things I was a little hesitant to visit in the last couple of weeks, and I'm going to read that just to read it. But we had an episode in Q&A about what's been going on, and that was what I wanted to put across is that in all of these sort of fictional doomsday virus scenario stories, you don't ever see the precipitation of the loss of daily life and how it kind of starts from one end to another in terms of the stakes are lower than the stakes are higher. That being entertainment. There was that day where I remember I was at work and I got continuous news notifications about the March Madness is canceled, the NBA is canceled, and then Disneyland is closed, and it was just that was actually pretty frightening in the few moments that happened. And so, kind of considering like the worst case scenario in terms of like The Last of Us, where they're literally walking around with guns killing people. Yeah. I'm just like, when the game starts off, someone's watching television and they don't have television in the main setting of the story. And to me, it's like, well, I mean, gosh, like you just start to wonder like what it was like for them and how far we are from there. And realistically, we're not anywhere near them because I don't believe anyone's killed anybody in fear of this virus as of yet. I mean, in terms of the world, let alone America. But, I think a lot of us genre fans and nerds would kind of like consider that. I mean, because I was joking all of us were joking at the bookstore before they closed that a year from now, we were seeing a lot of manuscripts about like, this kind of scenario, like doomsday settings and stuff. And so you just kind of wonder, like, how far are we from the – like the name of our episode on Kinoe was called When Do We Know We're in a Post-Apocalypse? And because so many things have been happening that's not happened in the modern world. Like the Spanish flu doesn't count because that was like over a century ago. So you have to wonder when the end game is of this. And although I'll admit – when I'm playing the game, I don't think about the coronavirus. I just think of, all right, where do I go? Where do I go? Am I being surrounded? And I'm often listening with my Daredevil radar vision to what's the other end of the corner.
Well, I agree. Yeah, with all of that, I think it's interesting how a lot of the literature, or even this, is less fantasy. I mean, it's not extreme, of course, but just to like view now with what's going on, like, oh, this is a little more uncomfortable than it would have normally, and it would have been, normally. And Harold and I had talked about, I wonder if The Last of Us 2 is delayed because of, optics, like they maybe didn't want it to come out in this particular circumstance. And I did listen to an interview with Neil Druckmann, who's the creative director on it, and he didn't mention any of that. Of course, coronavirus affected them in the sense that all these game designers and can't work together, and so that's harder to get stuff done. But they're like at the 1 yard line, and I think it was just more of we want to have this pristine product ready for you, and circumstances are just kind of preventing that. Because I thought, all these people are really wanting this game. They're so excited for it. They've been waiting for it for so long that there's also the idea of bringing joy or happiness, because I know those are two different things, to people like that are having a tough time potentially. So it's one of those tough things. But it's interesting. I hope certainly that we don't get to that place in the world where you ask, oh, what was that? It was the ice cream truck is the part that I watched with you as you played last night of Joel explained to Ellie what an ice cream truck was, which was really interesting.
As the world zoomed around me.
I know. That was so crazy.
I genuinely never thought that like they delayed it for like optics reasons.
Yeah.
Like when Krasinski tweeted that like what's this movie called? Quiet Place 2 have been delayed indefinitely. I knew it was partly because of like the virus and partly because maybe it's just the wrong place, wrong time. Whereas with this game, I just imagine, okay, maybe they can't get to the studio. But like, I didn't think that like maybe it was because of like, just it would hit you close to home. So that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Who knows? In their letter, they didn't mention any of that, but, it could certainly be true of that. I've been playing Resident Evil 2 Remake, and like you, so survival horror games are not my thing. I only played The Last of Us because when I first got it, because I trust in and really love Naughty Dog ever since they did the original Crash Bandicoot stuff. And so I thought I'll give this a shot. And I'm glad I did. It did make me extremely nervous. But the story, I think it's bigger than just being survival horror. It's certainly a story about these two characters and their relationship between each other. And Resident Evil, seemed like a fun game, and I thought I'll give it a shot. And thanks to my nephew for giving me a gift card for PlayStation over Christmas, and I got it on sale. And it is a bit more survival horror, and even though I played it 4 times, I just finished the 4th and final time this morning, actually. There are still moments that things happened that startled me. So, and I can only play those games when it's daylight out or if the lights are on. But still, Raccoon City is shut down and quarantined because of a virus. And so just like certain aspects of that are really interesting. Luckily, there aren't zombies running around. But yeah, it's just interesting to play some of these particular games.
Mm-hmm. I mean, last time you recorded with Carolyn, it was kind of like, what was it? I guess it was a month ago. But how intense have things gotten since then?
Yeah, so when I recorded with her, school was distance learning. I think we had only started, I'm trying to think if it even started the week that, it was going to start maybe later in the week. And so it hadn't officially started, but school was out, and we were going to go through spring break and then come back on the 14th of April. So there was still, the possibility there. You could still go out and congregate, no more than 10 people. But there were more stores open. And for example, like Starbucks, I could pick something up if I wanted to at the grab and go. But now non-essential things like Starbucks, unless there's a drive-through, that's all closed. Grocery stores are pretty limited now. There are these spaces. I went to Wegmans this week, and you have to wait behind a red line, and then you put your stuff on the little conveyor belt that moves, but you can't approach the cash register until the person tells you can do that. School is now out throughout the rest of the year. There's no prom. Right now there's no commencement either, probably. School will end a bit earlier, and I'm trying to think. Oh, now we're at the stay in unless necessary situation. You can still exercise, which is lovely, and you can go to work if it's absolutely necessary, which I will have to soon to get stuff to prepare for the rest of this long haul. But otherwise, I think we're not as shut up as maybe New York or California at the moment. But yeah, it jumped up, and that was just a couple weeks ago. So it's gotten pretty crazy. I also watched, which I shouldn't do anymore because it's kind of freaky, but on YouTube they have a time lapse of the cases, and it's a world map. Depending on how many cases there are, the regions get darker red, and so it's kind of scary to watch that as it morphs, throughout the dates and how that happens. I didn't know Iran. This was interesting. I was talking to my mom about it. Iran was really heavily hit. I mean, it was black or really dark red around the same time that China was. I was trying to figure out why Iran would have been hit so hard, because it was pretty densely hit. I don't know how to say, but more so than the U.S. and quicker. So that was really interesting. But yeah, so it's interesting. It's an interesting time. I think mental health is certainly what I'm most worried about, going stir crazy. But as long as I can get out and walk or run, I think that's great. And then doing this, I think is public service. Might sound silly to say so, but just kind of trying to keep a sense of normalcy and like, hey, I've got a podcast that comes out monthly. I'm still going to do that podcast for you guys. So yeah, how about you? What has it looked like for you where you are?
The soonest affecting elements of it was at my job, because we took out all the tables and the chairs, and we had to constantly wash our hands, and we canceled a lot of our signings and events. And then the county that I work in is not the county that my house is at, and the Davidson County, which is so where my house is at. When that was kind of suggested on a general lockdown, I was like, okay, it's probably responsible for me to stay home because my mom has a lot of health issues, and if I get this thing, I'd probably be fine, but I can't risk infecting her. So I told them, hey, I want to take a week or two off, and a week after that, the store closed, and you can only do online pickup with that place. Then my dad and my brother start working at home, and we're just essentially staying in, only going out for food and some walks in the evening. I've actually been keeping in shape in my room. I have some dumbbells, so it's been kind of like Terror Squad, Clubber Lang training, which is essentially is good because I was going to go crazy. The only thing I wish is had an adjustable bench to work off of. But alas, otherwise, yeah, you kind of just keep your head down. I still have my freelance gig at DC, so I can get some income then. But obviously, hopefully this won't go too long before things start getting really dire. But yeah, that's kind of the situation we're maintaining and just trying to be responsible, because it's not so much whether you get sick, but whether other people who are less fortunate get sick. And you have to – this is one of those things where, like, you know, it's rare for an entire country or a planet to kind of have to stick together for a unifying cause, but this is where you got to do it. Otherwise, scenario.
Yeah, I think that's been the most disheartening, I guess, is you are starting to see, I think, poor human nature pop through. And, you know, we haven't had rioting or people breaking into stores, but just the carelessness of, well, if I get it, I get it. And I mean, you know, sure, that's true, but it's not about you. It's about if you get it, you could also cause other people to get it. So it's interesting because I feel like we're in a very me-centric world. I don't know if it's just the U.S. or it's a lot of people, but it seems like the U.S. is pretty selfish and just like, oh, that's fine if I get it, but you're not thinking outside of yourself. So that's the one thing that I think is a bit sad. But I feel heartened then, though, going on like Instagram or Twitter or something, and you have these people who like Megan Rapinoe or the U.S. Women's National Team or the Arsenal Ladies Football Club, you know, giving ideas of how to work out at home and stay home and be a hero like that. Just stay home and keep other people safe. So I'm hoping that because, you know, those people are influencers in the sense of in the public eye, that maybe they'll be, you know, people like us will be convinced to do that. But yeah, that's I think the worst thing we've seen so far. And Florida being weird, you know, people still going to spring break and hanging out on the beach. So weird.
Oh my God! And people, you know, are quick to blame millennials for that because youth, but like it's Generation Z that's destroying themselves. So like, us millennials, like someone said online, us millennials are worried about our moms,
yeah.
And it's just like,
yeah.
I think we're a lot more anxiously responsible than the boomers have depicted us in the wider media. But like, I mean, that's kind of a smaller conversation, but no, people. There is a video like a couple weeks ago of people at some sort of honky tonk bar in Nashville, like living it up when the lockdown started happening, and it's just like I gotta get out of this place. I'm sick of Nashville.
Yeah. I wish I could. My nephew's birthday is next week, actually, and I wish I could go down and visit my parents and everything. But my concern is like, you know, I was at school, I've been around people, so I just feel like I'll have cultures that, you know, I might bring to others, and it would just, concern me. So that's like the saddest thing is, you know, it's nice not living with someone to a certain extent, but also it's like kind of been hard to not have any contact with anybody, which is why I do my isolation snipes sometimes. It's not completely altruistic, but I check in on people using FaceTime and get to talk to them face to face. So that's been heartening. And like I said, last night was actually like it was a big thumbs up for me. I watched Resident Evil, the third film with Harold, where we we were text Skyping. Next time we'll use the Netflix, the little party thing, and watching it. And then just, you know, happened to see Donovan playing, and that was just a lot of fun. So there are some things that, just try to find, like Shag says, find your joy somehow so you don't go crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think this is if we can compartmentalize the hundreds of thousands of people who've died, and we're fortunate enough to kind of stick it out, this is going to be a very interesting time for self-discovery, whether we kind of just taking care of ourselves mentally or working on things that can help us mentally. And it's one of those moments where, not since 2001, we're living in history, and you just have to kind of be aware of yourself as that's happening, so you can kind of have a perspective that you might not have otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's hoping. What I'm looking forward to is for it. It's going to sound weird for me to say this, but I'm waiting for Corona to peak because I think when that happens, it's like, we've survived the worst of it, and then it'll be downhill from there. But yeah, it's yet to peak, so that's the unfortunate thing. And also remember, with all this data, the numbers are people. So, when we're saying all these unfortunate casualties and things like that, they're actual people, and funerals aren't allowed, which is really sad. So all those things to, consider.
Also,
but
this is very important. Do not listen to the president.
The president? Is that what you said?
No, I'm serious. He's getting people killed. Don't do it. Just listen to anybody who works in the WHO or the CDC and who talks about the day-to-day business of dealing with this on the front lines. Don't listen to the person who's been 100% wrong since the jump and let this happen faster than it had to for his own purposes.
I think Dr. what's his name? Fauci,
I think.
Yeah, he's pretty good, right? He's someone that we can rely on his. He is. Yeah, his interests are all in contain this. Okay, so there you go. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the 2020 election. I went on a walk with someone. We were socially distanced, but we went on a walk, and I actually said, "Wouldn't it be scary if we couldn't vote? If we couldn't go out and vote?"
There was a Justice League episode that kind of referenced that. If you recall, in A Better World with the Justice Lords.
Oh, yes.
A scene in which Justice Lord Superman was talking to, who was clearly George W. Bush, about the prospect of delaying an election. And I remember listening to the commentary saying, or maybe I read about it, saying that was perceived as a possibility during the War on Terror back in 2003, 2004. And it was kind of eerie that they kind of mirrored that idea. But delaying the election to me is when has that ever happened in American history? So
yeah, it would remind me of in Roman times. You of course have your consuls, which are annually elected. They're basically the president. But in times of extreme emergency, they could either make one of those consuls or dictator, or go out and find someone, and that person can be granted emergency powers for 6 months. So my thought would be we grant Trump an extended period to get through this kind of thing. That would be I think the scary thing is not being able to go out and vote. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But yeah, it'll be interesting how this, I think it should be, and it will be a topic in the debates once they start happening again, and see, and it should also be for the future debates and things like what would you do to plan for this? Because I think once we pass it, because I'm very hopeful that we will, we can't, rest on our laurels and hope and pray that won't ever happen again. So hopefully we'll learn from this, and then we'll be better for the future. But
hopefully it's the word.
I know. Well, we're here to talk about sunnier things, though.
You damn straight we are!
And it's, in fact, some Cassandra Cain. Before we get into that, I do want to say to hold on after the episode, at the end, kind of like when Carolyn popped on and we had a conversation about Star Wars. I recently had a conversation with Ian Prime himself, Ian Miller, about the 2020 Emma adaptation. We talked about a couple different adaptations, but then focused on that one. So if you want to hear that, it's kind of like a literature spotlight. So if you want to hear that, that will be at the end. It was a lot of fun to talk about that. But yeah, so we're going to do this one. This was the one, if you recall, a couple episodes before, Donovan said he was, quote, vibrating in preparation or in hopes of talking about this. I guess not really. In expectation. That would be the best word. In expectation of this. Yeah, I'm sure you, like your PS4 controller. So here we are. We're going to do it. 7, 8, and 9, and fingers crossed that Donovan doesn't give it a 10 out of 10 like he has the past 2 times. But who knows?
What kind of fingers crossed is that?
For you to be realistic. Okay. Well, Donovan, it is your turn now to do a plot synopsis.
All right, I'll just get to wipe the drool out of my mouth.
Oh,
and my God. As succinctly as humanly possible. Did you want me to describe the covers synopsis, or wait until after I'm done?
We can wait, because that is one of my points, is to talk about the cover.
Sure, no problem. Batgirl number 7. Wham! Batman punches Cassandra in the face with the left crossed, and essentially the scene is that her office is fine, but without her special body language reading skills, her defense is shot. He gives her a CD disc to learn 127 martial arts that, like, fandom wants to say that he's a master, but he probably just knows tertiarily, and says, we'll try it next week. Cass tries to basically learn these lessons in a day or two, but she learns nothing. She's getting worse, and she's basically not taking any of the knowledge because, as she says it, there's all the knowledge is no substitute for knowing. What she used to be able to do was much more like time flowing into itself. You know, it was like breathing. It was like just understanding instinctively how people were going to react. Wham! She's hit in the face again. Wham! She's hit in the face again. And she is insistent that she needs to get better because people outside in Gotham City every day, every night are dying. Her life is not as important as theirs. But Batman's like, oh, Jason Todd. So you're not going to be blown up on my watch. I'm going out of town for a few days. Don't do anything stupid. Cut to somebody doing something stupid when a bunch of crooks on the rooftop are taken down by a mysterious masked woman who we don't is Cass. So down at the next day at a mall, we see Oracle and Batgirl just kind of shopping around, meeting each other, and Oracle says, yo, I know it's you who's wearing that face paint and running around beating up criminals, and I'm not going to tell on you, but if Batman says you're not ready, you're not ready. Cass says, were you ready? And she's like, I'm not you. You know, we're two different people, so you have to do the intelligent thing. Cut to that night where Cass does the exact same thing because she can't help herself. She's running around looking for trouble, and all of a sudden, she sees a lilac and violet bespotted figure just pimp walking down the street. And we have a flashback of Oracle showing Batgirl just like the villain roster. She's like going through the K's, the L's, Killer Croc, Killer Moth. Let's go to the L's. Oh, okay, here we are. Long story. She's kind of an assassin.
Would she be in the L's or the S's?
I'm thinking the L's. There's actually an issue later on where you see that list and it is in alphabetical order, so I'm guessing the L's, but I might be wrong.
But I appreciate you mentioning Killer Moth.
Yeah. I'm imagining Oracle was like, you know, Killer Moth, loser. And speaking of losers, let's go down to the L's. Her hobby is hunting down the best fighters in the world and beating them to death with her bare hands. I can break these down. These combat ratings go down for pages, but I can break them down real easy for you. She's better than you are. Stay away from her. And it's Sandra Wouchon, a.k.a. Lady Shiva, walking to a French restaurant. So Cassandra's like, let me at her, let me at her, let me at her. She runs in there and is waiting for Shiva to start some trouble, but all she does is just order a meal and finish it. So before Cass is thrown out for stealing water and bread, we see a type of like foreign dignitary, like a princess of some kind, with two bodyguards that might denote some sort of Middle Eastern origin, or maybe even Indian, kind of enter the restaurant. And as Shiva gets up, Cass realizes that's why she's there. So in an instant, Shiva takes out one guard, she takes out another guard, and as Batgirl runs up to her, she gets crossed in the face the same way that Batman did at the beginning of issue 7, which leads us to issue 8, in which we have the same thing happen. So as Shiva cracks her on the face, the gun flies into her hand, and she just grabs it without looking like a boss and puts the gun up to the, let's just say the princess's face. Batgirl runs in front of the gun and just says, you and me, which intrigues Shiva. Cut to another wham into the kitchen, and while Batgirl tries her best, Shiva effortlessly dislocates her shoulder and just spends the next couple of pages beating the crap out of her. She launches to her finishing move, which is a kill as Batgirl is paralyzed on the ground. And the last thing she sees before Shiva connects is the image of her killing the mob boss when she was 8 years before she left David Kane. So she's dead. No, she's fine. She wakes up in the ambulance, and she's like, oh, she didn't kill me. She left me alive. Mistake. She disarms the EMT at her side and grabs her stuff and jumps out of the ambulance onto a cop car because, you know, there was a fight. And although she's broken some ribs and dislocated her arm, she's still – the way that Cassandra kind of rolls, she can kind of ignore the pain that must be consuming her body, and basically tries to find Shiva again, even though she realizes this is incredibly idiotic. I didn't beat her when I was healthy. How can I beat her when I'm like at half strength? Shiva Batman's right behind her and says, we're a lot alike, you and I. Cass is like, you didn't kill the girl, you didn't kill me. Why? And Shiva says, why would I? I'm a warrior and I'm a murderer. I came here to find you, because I heard that you were the best. Imagine my disappointment at how much you sucked. And she's like, I can tell you're holding back, as well as gaps in your fighting style. Why are you holding back? And Cassandra says, I don't kill. And she was like, That's a waste. If we tried and had a death duel, things would be interesting. But whatever. I'll leave you to your like-minded mentor. My bracelet, please. And I'd have to neglect to mention that there was a bracelet that was left at the crime scene that people thought the EMTs thought were Cassandra's was actually Shiva's. So Cass has Shiva's property wrapped around her arm, saying, "Come and get it." And she was like, whatever. I've already broken enough bones of yours tonight, so please, one more time, my bracelet with your broken arm. So Cass kind of fumbles the bracelet into her palm, holds it out, and then cold cocks Shiva when she is least expecting it, which sends a shock of pain through her shoulder, but Shiva is knocked unconscious, and Cass says, "Okay, that was a cheap shot, but sorry, Shiva. I don't kill, but I don't lose either. Get wrecked." Issue 9. Things are not going well with Batman. Her defense still sucks, and he's just beating her around, and they both understand that she's not getting any better. But Batman says, "Hey, don't give up. This kind of fighting that we're into, it takes time, training, learning patterns, learning strategies, tricks." And Cass is like, how long is this going to take? And Batman's like, "Oh, cheer up. You work hard every day, and you'll be good enough for your costume for me to give you your costume back in a year." And she's like, no, not good enough. What about to be like you? And Batman's like, 10 years, maybe more. Cass kind of rolls around in her mind, 10 years. Kane made me perfect in 8. She resolves to meet Shiva for mysterious purposes. Batman goes out of town again, but here
he does this a lot. This entire story, it's about him going out of town.
I know, like to Macau or some places. While Batgirl asks Oracle to send a message to Shiva, Batman goes off to see David Kane, which I think is like the second or third time. And he goes through his film collection. Cass, yeah, I know.
Sounds sketchy.
Particularly with the image of like a naked David Kane drunk on his bed. But that being said, Cass meets Shiva on a rooftop and says, Lady Shiva, thank you for meeting. And then Shiva just proceeds to like kick her teeth out. Batman sits down and watches on a film strip images of a man, David Kane, and a little girl twirling a knife on her finger, that being Cassandra, or Batgirl, whatever. I'm tired of doing that. David Kane loads up a couple of guns and starts shooting Cassandra in her back. And we see Cassandra react to getting shot in the shoulder. And again, this is like an 8-year-old Cassandra. And then begins to dodge the bullets and take them apart, all with a smile on her face. We cut back to Batman, who is absolutely hard. He looks like he just saw the footage from Return of the Joker, while David Kane wakes up and is behind him going, "That's my girl." So Batman's like, I thought you trained her like you trained me, like you trained other people, but all you did was abuse this child. And Kane's like, "Is that all you saw?" "Yeah, some detective." He's like, is this what you came for, this little film festival? And Batman's like, "No, there was also the 2 cops you killed during No Man's Land." And David Kane's like, "I don't know what you're talking about, Batman. Now let me just pull this gun out of my dresser." And Batman's like, "Yeah, I'm not here to arrest you. I'm here to make you wish that I had." Come back to Gotham City, where Batgirl's saying, "I wish I brought a mouthpiece." And she was like, "Okay, what do you have, a death wish? Like, why do you want to fight me?" And she's like, "I don't want to fight you." What do you want? "I need a favor." And he was like, a favor after that crap you pulled on me last issue? You're not leaving here alive. But Cassandra's like, "Look, you see moves before they happen. I used to. I want to again." And Shiva says, yes, I see it now. The gap in your style. I can give you back what you lost rather quickly, but there's a price. 1 year from now, we have to fight. You use all your skills, your killing skills, and I'll use mine. A death duel, as befits warriors. What is your answer? Cassandra is thinking to herself, "I'm never going to kill again, so I'll go all out and then I'll die. I don't have to do this. I can train with Batman. I can be mediocre for a lifetime or perfect for a year." And the last image is she was like devilish grin. She says, "Well." So we cut back to the Batcave, where both Cass and Batman are beaten up. And Batman's like, "Look, Batgirl, I've been working on different ways to help you regain your fighting skills. Nothing yet, but Cass like, "Oh, no, it's good. I'm ready now." And so Batman tries throwing some punches at her, and just like she used to, she dodges them effortlessly, with a similar grin on her face as Shiva had. Batman's like, "How'd you do that?" And the issue ends with Batgirl saying, she has the costume in her hands. "I gave it everything I got." and that is Batgirl 7 through 9.
Thank you.
Oh, believe me, it was my pleasure.
I'm sure it was. Hey, pretty good story. We're going to talk about it now. I should hope so. Yeah. What if we just moved on? Well, what's your grade? Okay, good. And then we moved on. I know. Okay. I will say that I did enjoy this, and I remembered liking it the first time I had read it. But there are a couple things that I have questions about and some issues I also have with it. So you're here to, of course, defend it and explain. Oh, boy. Okay, so first I would like to talk about the timing. I think that's probably the biggest issue I have in the storyline, especially in 9. I can't tell exactly when all of this is happening. Obviously, Batman gives us some timelines because he's away for a week, a couple days. He lets us know that. But after 8, she's pretty messed up. Her shoulder is taped. I do think that the tape needed to be drawn farther down her stomach, actually, in order to encompass her ribs. But that's an artistic choice, I suppose. But getting into 9, she's back training, and so I wonder what the time gap is there, because I feel like she should still be injured. And then how long did she train with Shiva? Because that also seemed like a really short time. So it could be just the way it's plotted, but it just seems so quick for, number one, the healing, and then number 2, her getting her skills back with Shiva. So what do you think about the timeline that they do throughout these 3 issues?
No, that's a really good point, and I was thinking about that too. I think I've always thought about that whenever I read these issues, because as Barbara mentioned in the last issue, she was like shot like 5 times. I imagine that, except for obviously like 7 and 8 bleed right into each other. But I think generally speaking, this is one of those comics where like maybe a month in between issues is actually a month. That's the only way we can kind of like hop to the idea that she can recover from her injuries even kind of fast to kind of start standing on her feet again. Because as good as Kat says, she is literally human. Literally human. She's a fictional character. She's human. So I'm imagining that between 8 and 9 is a month, and between 6 and 7 is a month. And there's no real dialogue to go into that, but obviously time has passed. It's not the next day. It's not the next week. So I'm just kind of like putting my own headcanon in there, because I'm just figuring that like it's not meant to be the same day, because they make a plot point to how injured she is. So it's just like, I don't know, 4 weeks later.
And then how long is she with Shiva, do you think?
Oh, I have no idea. I don't know. That's kind of meant to be a mystery.
It's ambiguous. Okay. Yeah, I just wonder. And I mean, Shiva did say that she would give it back to her and quickly. So you can imagine that she's probably a tough taskmaster. So let's go through the individual issues, because I'll pick up. But that was just the biggest question that I had. And then there's one other big issue that I have, but we'll get to it once we have it. So in issue 7, actually, sorry, let's stop right here. Let's just stop right here and talk about the covers. Apologies, because I do like to do this now. It was a lot of fun for Carolyn to talk about the covers. There aren't any ridiculous things here. Oh, the pile of racism. And then the one where it says, in this issue, Batman dies. But yeah, talk about the different covers. So starting with number 7.
I'm going to go back to that Batman dies thing, because I want to mention that. But like issue 7, it's a good cover. I mean, like I remember – now I wasn't reading – I will say this, like right off the jump. This was this 3-parter was the first time I actually like sat down and like read the Batgirl series. And it had been like – that was around 2005. I remember that summer. It was around the same time that Batman Begins is coming out. But I do remember this comic book coming out when it came out in like 2000, right? Like I remember that scene when he was telling her about Jason Todd, like in my comic book shop. So I think the cover drew me to reading this issue, like the idea of Batman just like ripping it in half. It's a dramatic cover. I like how Damian Scott illustrates the fabric and the texture of their bat costumes, because it looks mostly like kind of a mix between leather and vinyl, where it's flexible, but it's also, you can imagine some sort of material makes it possibly bulletproof. So it's not just, I guess someone could see it as like, maybe wrapping paper, but also I'm imagining like the density of the fabric to be kind of stretchy and stuff. So him kind of ripping apart shows that there's a lot of like, I don't know, angry effort going into it. Mm-hmm. The cover issue 7 is good. My favorite is issue 8, where it's straight up Shiva and Batgirl cross kicking each other with the bat signal in the background. To me, that's just like that's a comic book cover, and I am here for it.
Yeah, I think with 7, the only thing that I don't like, because I feel like it doesn't make sense in terms of what we know, but I think it had to be done, is that the way the cowl is created is as if it were a hard or soft shell rather than fabric. And I think we know that her cowl is actually fabric, but I think the way it need to be presented here so that we could see clearly that it's Cassandra's outfit, and if you had used it like fabric, it wouldn't be standing up on its own. So that's the only thing that I'm like, oh well, I mean, realistically it wouldn't, but just to show, yeah, I know it's very dramatic, like it seems like he's really angry, whereas it's the opposite, because Batman's actually portrayed pretty caring, I would say, throughout this entire arc. Look, I'm defending Batman.
What is this?
I know, the world is topsy-turvy. I agree that my favorite is 8. The fact that, her name is Shiva. She cannot be defeated.
Heck yeah.
And the Cassandra, she's got her new outfit on, her stealth Cassandra outfit on. And Shiva's having the time of her life, it seems. She's got the smirk that she carries for all of them. And, of course, the bat signal in the back. And then for 9...
It's very standard.
Yeah, she's back in costume, but what is going on in the picture or in the image doesn't really happen in there. You kind of would wish maybe something would reflect, her getting, well, I guess her being back in costume is the big thing. But
it's kind of a spoiler, too. Like she doesn't get the suit till the last page.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to have her and Shiva again somehow. Or talk about a debt must be paid, or the wager. I don't know, something to show that something's about to happen. But so I would say 8 is the best of those 3. So with number 7, something that I had to stop reading right away is that Oracle calls her Cassandra for the first time, kind of cuts it off, and she goes back and calls her Batgirl, whether that's because she realized, that she's naming her in her mind and it came outward, or she stops because she feels like maybe Cass prefers Batgirl. But this is actually the first time that Oracle says the C word, Cassandra, so we can log that. But no explanation as to why she did it. And like I said, the origin comes from that No Man's Land novelization by Greg Rucka. But did you catch this? And what do you think about her pausing and then calling her Batgirl right afterwards?
Yeah, I always forget that happens in this issue, because I'm always like, I don't know when issue that happens, but it's early in the run. I like that detail. It's like, look, you need to relax, Cass. Sorry, Batgirl. I don't know. That to me is cool. I like. I mean, Cassandra Cain, I think, is a very nice name. And when I had interest with the character, I know her as Cassandra Cain, but I like these early issues where, whether she's in the costume or not, just call her Batgirl. I just think that's cool. So it's neat. I don't know if we'll ever know, because the novelization of No Man's Land and the Batman comics are different. The different formats. So I don't know if we'll ever know, editorially, what went behind naming her Cassandra Cain, whether Joe Illidge remembers, or Kelly Puckett, or Scott Peterson. Honestly, I think we'll take a time machine, because it feels like such a detail that might be lost in the weeds that, if I find out, you'll be the first to know. But I'm always confused. But whatever. Is it just by this point her name is Cass? I don't think they call her. I might be wrong. In fact, I probably am. But I don't know if they call her Cassandra again until the next writer, who is Dylan Horrocks. It might be Grabex. I forget the order of the next writer, but or maybe Chuck Dixon. But I don't think that in this current Puckett and Scott run, she's referred to as Cassandra. But again, next month you might find that different. So, but I just remember generally she's known as Batgirl.
I think it's something that'll probably point out, just like Barbara Gordon's hairdos. I'm sure that once it happens, because my focus is attuned to it now, so I'm sure we'll keep keep on that. It's interesting, though, because you talk about, different formats. And, if this were the Star Wars universe, everything would be, because they're so almost clinical in how everything needs to match and have the same continuity. But DC, even now, doesn't have that. So back then, just because it happened in the novelization doesn't mean that the reasons are the same here. It does make sense, obviously, with the mythology going back, but Oracle and Cassandra. And I'll be interested to see when, because I think comic writers love alliteration, so Cassandra Cain, but we call her that, Cassandra Cain, and it just like rolls off the tongue, and that's fine. But if you stop to think about it, the fact that she takes her father's name is a huge deal. And so I'm wondering when that happens and if there's any attention drawn to that.
I mean, I don't know, because I feel that like later on, especially with the Batgirl, that crappy Batgirl miniseries, it is pluses and minuses, but like David King calls her Cassandra, I think. So like, I don't know. Honestly, I'd have to do like a appearance list, like from top to bottom reread, just to kind of like pull the pieces together. But like, because he doesn't call her any name, and like we'll get into it later. When they retcon that like she was her mom, it's like I think some writers even say, "Oh, we named you Cassandra," and like with the context of this, what's interesting to me is if Barbara gave her the name Cassandra, so she calls her Cass, and then she apologizes. It's like, oh, sorry, I know you don't like the name that I gave you when I adopted you. I don't know. It's amusing things going on there. Again, I like the name Cassandra Cain, but like I also like calling her Batgirl. To me, it's like call him Dick as opposed to Richard. Alfred. So like that kind of thing. It's just like a personal preference.
Yeah, so we'll see. I like how in this issue we've got distance learning happening to a certain extent, where Batman gives a disc of all these things. I mean, it's practically what I'm doing with my students, so that was really interesting. And the fact that I think in one go she actually sits there and watches the whole thing. I don't know if he just talks though, so he's not really the best teacher since he's just telling her about everything. What do you think about her, I call it the non-Batgirl outfit that she came up with and uses?
Oh, for like the one panel she had, or the couple panels she had, like the scrubby mask.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting for a shot. I actually really like what she's wearing in 7 and 8. Generally, like the tight turtleneck and the black jeans. I think that's very 2000s. It's an interesting. I like again, Damian Scott's a really good artist, so I like kind of the baggy utility belt wrapped around her shoulder and like the grappling hook and stuff. But like, it's interesting. But having just written an article for DC Universe about Cassandra's various identities, I've never even considered putting this on there because it's not really one that sticks. I think Scott makes it more interesting than it is. But for one shot, it's fine. I like the idea that like she's wearing this, and then the next page, Oracle's like, "Yeah, I know who you are." So it's pretty much useless.
Yeah. Well, you can't get past Oracle with certain things. It's kind of like a teenager trying to, and I guess that's really what it is, right? Trying to obey the spirit, I suppose, of the law, but not necessarily stick to it, and then try to get away with some things. But of course, Oracle knows what's going on, which I actually really like Oracle in this particular issue. Just like her trying to give her positive reinforcement and help her out, and then meeting her in the store, which at first I thought, is that Oracle? I guess it has to be Oracle. Yeah, I guess she told Cass to meet her at Tracy's, but I really... Oh,
they didn't go there themselves? Does she like live there with her?
Did they? It kind of no, because it says it's you right at the beginning. So I feel like she shows up.
Thought that. You know what I thought? I thought that like Cass was like, it's that phrase, it's you, like kind of a fashion joke.
Okay, it could be, yeah. Maybe they did go together. Well, that's even sweeter, actually. If that's the fact that, because I mean, you think about what we know of Cass right now, and it doesn't seem like she'd be the type to go shopping. But the fact that they go out together, I think, is really nice. But then this big moment, I should call it a big moment, but I really liked that she is, I'm not going to tell on you, but I do want you to stop. Probably, for protection, obviously. And then she says, if he says you're not ready, you're not ready. And Cassandra asks Babs, were you ready? And Babs says, that's not the point, which I think is really interesting because Probably not. If I think back to her origin, it was all supposed to be a joke anyways. And so for her to go out was pretty dangerous. And so I like that there are similarities, even though these are disparate characters as well. I think there are similarities in their origins to a certain extent. So what do you think about this scene, which I really like?
I love this scene. Is it 2 pages? Yeah, this entire thing in Tracy's. For one thing, we have like a Pokemon reference with like a kid who looks like Ash Ketchum wanting a Pokemon doll because it was. But like, I don't know. I kind of go from top to bottom. I like them. It kind of reminds me of like the Cellulite scene where like they're kind of poking at each other. Like Cassandra still has problems communicating, but she's like, she gives, Oracle, you love this black lipstick, and Oracle's like, I don't wear lipstick. Yeah, you don't date either. Maybe you should. Oh, real? And like you see like the self-satisfied smirk on her face. And like, oh yeah, well take this cleanser, Mask Girl, and Cass is like, how did you know my secret? I did. It's like the Shadow of the Batgirl graphic novel. Yeah, that line, were you ready? And they're like, oh no, we're not talking about me. That to me is a very, it's almost kind of like parental big sister kind of thing where it's like, my mistakes aren't your mistakes, and like but she's not being like, evasive. She's saying like, that is not the point. You have a death wish, cut it out. But no, this is one of those things that is always in my mind when I think of these two.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just really great. And, I still kind of will complain about, and I'm still on the seat of disbelief in her language acquisition and, how easy kind of it has come for her. But I guess we can, given your timeline of when these events may happen, I guess she's been practicing, but also the fact that now she's got wit. So it's not just understanding the words, but using them, saying that date, maybe you should. And so Babs saying, oh, really? I mean, Babs is practically dating Dick Grayson, but no official commitment has happened. But the fact, so it's just really interesting to see that particular development. And last time that you were on, we were actually talking about, that it's hard for Barbara to communicate with her, and that was hard on her. So you can see the development of that relationship, and that now that they can communicate, I think how close they've gotten, so much closer, I think, now. Well,
this is a point that I wanted to bring up, because these 3 issues are, if you notice, these are the only issues in this initial Kelly Puckett run where, they started happening the last story where she started having thoughts in her head. But if you take away that story, these are the only 3 issues in the Kelly Puckett Damien Scott run where she has like thought captions, where she thinks to herself,
really?
Why is everybody trying to help me insane, or this really sucks. Like it's actually not. I like it. That's how I was introduced to it. But if you go by the history before and after, it's actually not really Cassandra's traditional voice in terms of her inner monologue. After this, once she gets her kind of quote unquote powers back, I mean she thinks and she speaks, but it's done a lot more muted, right? Like when she goes back to speaking, it's very, very like there's not much of it. And obviously when the other writers get in, like Horrocks or Greibach, she will have that again because it's a different writer, different voice. But this is the only time when she's not at her fighting capabilities where she speaks and things like this. And it's more traditional of an average, comic book, where she is, when she's fully skilled, she doesn't think and speak as generally as other people do. That being said, this kind of is my preferred take on how she speaks, where she there's a lot of ellipses in between words. Like she knows what she wants to say, but she says when Barbara says, "I don't wear lipstick," and Cass responds, "Don't date either. Maybe should." That to me is much better than the broken language. Like I'm a child who doesn't know English talking that she does in the modern comic books, which to me just reads as insulting. Because she's taking her time and she knows what she wants to say, but she can't. She has to think about how to pronounce it, how to get it across, how to give it a voice. So she's when she says, "Were you ready?" She says, "Were you ready?" And to me, I just think that's smarter. I see what you're saying. I like how she speaks and how she. I think you have a point in terms of how she thinks. Like when she says, "This sucks," I think that she has that sort of emotion, but I don't know if she's actually thinking of those words in her head. But again, this is the last time we'll see her think that way because of the mental state and where she is in terms of her personal fighting skills.
Thanks for pointing that out, because I don't think I would have remembered from this one to the next one that all of a sudden her thought bubbles are gone, or her narration boxes.
Right.
So then we get to Lady Shiva, and I do want to talk about this, and it'll sort of blend into 8 as well. So in the flashback, I first want to point out that this is how I think Cass should have been taped in 8 as well, where it was like completely down her belly. But again, artistic choice, I suppose. But when Barbara says her hobby, Shiva, her hobby is hunting down the best fighters in the world and beating them to death with her bare hands, that is not who I envision Shiva to be. Is this for this particular story? Am I missing? Because I know she's a trained assassin, but this sounds like she just goes out, wants to prove she's the best, so she hunts, kind of like Kraven the Hunter. Is this just me? Have I misinterpreted Shiva's character all these years and her motives? Or is this just for the story so that, we have this confrontation between Cass and Shiva, and it makes sense that Shiva would seek her out? What is your thought on this characterization of Shiva?
Well, okay, and I'm glad we came up to this, because this is always a point. This is also a point.
This is why I have a podcast, for good questions.
Well, nobody can get these Asian DC women right ever. And I'm not saying you, like the writers in general, but I'm not even saying.
Sure, I get it, yeah.
What is your just to make this a conversation? I don't want to mansplain, because genuinely, what is your understanding of Shiva's character, either at this point or just overall?
Obviously, she's trained with several people, and she's become one of the best, if not the best. I think there's certainly a list that people agree and disagree on. But my thought was that she is a hired assassin / mercenary, and that she does like to go after big game, as we'll call them, so people that it will be a hunt and it'll be fun for her to match her skills with, but she doesn't do it completely for funsies. She's actually getting paid to do it. So she would turn down a job if it were easy pickings or something like that. So I feel like that's what it is, rather than her Kraven the Hunter-ing it, where she just goes out looking for someone to go up against and prove that she's the best.
It is actually how Oracle's describing it closer. I'll kind of get into what I said at the BGSU presentation in terms of who Shiva is, because she's originally not a Batman character. She was you first meet her in the 70s comic Richard Dragon Kung Fu Fighter, and basically she was trained in martial arts after her sister was killed, but her main gig is that she loves excitement. That goes all the way back to the 70s Denny O'Neil comics. She will go up against insurmountable odds because she loves to test herself, no matter how deadly things are, because she is the best. She trained herself to be the best. When she was brought back 10 years later in The Question, she's much more. I mean, we came off of Cry for Blood, that Huntry story, where she met where we go into Richard Dragon's in the little hovel. She's much more of a much more unique character. She's very self-interested, which you hear self-interest and you sound selfish, right? But her reasons for doing things are not easily understandable by the masses. Yeah, in the DC Comics world, she's. The consistent thing about her is that she is the best, and she always wants to prove herself against the best. The reason why she trained Bruce to get his fighting skills back in Nightfall was because he was one of the best, and she wanted, if she could train him back, so to see if he was at his peak, could she beat him then? And she also, then there's some crap about him being a killer under her or whatever. That's kind of out of character. Also, basically, whenever she's often written in the Batman comics, she's actually written out of character, at least throughout the 90s. That's much more of an assassin. She's not Deathstroke. She's written to be a gun for hire. That's in her history, but that's kind of weird. She kind of just goes around and does what she wants, and if she's fighting somebody who she believes can give her a challenge, that's what she gets. That's what she's after. The truest line in this story in regards to her character is, "I'm a warrior, not a murderer." She's not somebody she's not the Joker who just kills people for whatever. She'll kill people all the time, but that's not that's not an end to itself. It's the fight. It's the experience. It's the struggle that she goes after rather than anything else. And so when she's like kind of walking down the street baiting Cassandra, and believe me, this is not me like, you know, making a judgment. If you kind of go back and read a lot of what's more consistent and what's kind of more impactful, that's more in line of what she's been done. And I think you also see this in Birds of Prey. I've not read the Birds of Prey issues where she's in, but I've read people talk about them. It's much more like that rather than kind of her being a gun for hire like you see in Hush or you see in Death in the Family or stuff like that. And this is a little bit more closer to her Richard Dragon question kind of like characterization than it is most of the Batman books, which kind of just had her as like this sort of like dragon lady assassin.
Okay. Lesson learned, I guess. Do you think she would go through, knowing this now about her, would she go through so elaborate a plan just to get into a fight with Cass here? Because she, I guess, we'll assume that she knew she had been spotted by Cass, walks into that French restaurant, waits for this princess person to pop in there in order to get Cass to actually attack in order to defend.
Yeah, but she does what she wants. I mean, she knows. Like we don't know. We don't see her find out, but she just knows. She comes into Gotham City knowing, all right, there's this new Batgirl. She's supposed to be an incredible fighter. But if she's rolling with Batman, there's all this morality crap that I got to wade through. So I imagine she did this to not attract Batman's attention and to also, you know, not deal with costumes. Like, she knows that, like, whoever Batgirl is this Eurasian girl that's fighting her. Like, it's like she can tell that. Her knowing, because she's not supposed to know who Batman is, at least not at this point. But she doesn't really care. Like it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, okay. And then, like, I think around Officer Down, someone forgets that and just assumes that she does. But like, she's there for Batgirl, and I think, yeah, she'll pull whatever, like, you know, Rube Goldberg scheme to get her to fight if she finds it amusing enough.
Okay. I mean, it seems like a really elaborate plan, but I guess we'll go with it. I do like how issue 7 ends as it began, just with two different people, but it's mirrored, or a ring composition, as I like to say. So that's how 7 ends. So with 8 here, well, I mean, it was a pretty brutal fight to see all this stuff happen, and I do appreciate the art that you actually see her right arm dangling down. She can not use it, Cassandra. And she's also flashing back to her first and only assassination. Why? She even says this. Why did I think of that? Why do you think at this moment is it because like her instincts are, because it's kind of like fight or will die or kill, that's why it flashes in, that her killer instincts are coming in? Or is there some other reason that she flashes back to her first assassination?
I think it's her death wish, and her death wish, I think, is a bit more, it kind of ranges between, like, you know, something that she's into. I think it starts off more subconscious than it becomes. Like, by the time we get to issue 25, which is the Lady Shiva Cassandra Cain death duel, like, that's more, she's much more aware of what she's after. But I think here, she's always, you know, she's throwing herself into danger and all this kind of stuff. Like, Batman and Oracle have already talked about this. Like, she kind of seeks some sort of karmic redemption, and I think when she thinks she's going to die, she's like, okay, well, I've come full circle. But she doesn't realize that's what her brain is telling her. That's my interpretation. Because she thinks about it again, and she's like, oh yeah, when I thought I was going to die, I thought about my first kill. But, like, I don't think in this issue she understands that, but I think that's meant to portray psychologically that's what's going on with her.
Gotcha. Do you think Shiva landed a death blow, or did she hold back?
Oh yeah, no, she held back. I think she even said that, like, you know, I didn't kill you because, you know, you're not worth killing. Because imagine my disgust when Batman's hot new martial arts partner sucks so bad. So it's like, well, whatever. I think she even meant to ask. She left her alive so she could ask, you know, like what is your deal?
Yeah. Do you think she left that bracelet on purpose in order to maybe have a second go, or that she knew Cass would seek her out?
I think so. It's a little vague, but I think that's the idea. Yeah. But she really wants that bracelet.
She sure does. And she gets it. She gets it with a whole lot more, of course. This one punch, is it realistic at the end that Shiva, I feel like she would be surprised, but she wouldn't have been knocked out. But what's your thought on this last scene here?
I mean, you know, like mother, like daughter. If anybody could do it, it would be Cassandra Cain. I love it. I love it so much. Because I'll talk about the art in a bit, but like because Cassandra's like, oh my god, everything's pain and I am hurting, and then like you look back and Cassandra's like fast asleep, and it's just like So, I mean, yeah, it's you kind of wonder because Shiva has the same sort of body language reading techniques that Cassandra Cain's supposed to. So it's one of those things where like is it speed? Is it just the pure? She did not see that coming. She wasn't looking out for it, which I think could be the latter because she does it with her broken arm. I mean, whatever. Is it realistic? No, it's not. But like I think it's brilliant.
Okay. Hey, that's all I wanted to hear is that it wasn't realistic. It does remind me of the one punch that Batman gives Guy Gardner, because I think that lays him out too. So you said like mother, like daughter. I'd say also like adopted father, like adoptive daughter.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that.
So anything else on 8 for you?
I love the artwork so much that I kind of wish they were always drawn like this. And like again, Damian Scott is an incredibly dynamic artist. His artwork changes wildly. It's already changed from how it looked in issue 1, and I would say it even with the same inker, it changes from issue 8 to issue 9 just a little bit. Like it varies between like detail to like kind of something a little bit more dynamic and kind of stylized. But there's a lot of like wind blowing in through their hair and stuff. There's a great shadows. Okay, so and again, not to kind of again conversations upon conversations, but like in this issue, Lady Shiva's Lady Shiva and Cassandra Cain, they just happen to be like two Asian women in this comic book, and they look different. Like you can see like the constant cutting back between like their faces. They're not the same person. They're not drawn with the same exact eyes, but they're still recognizably like human beings with like is the word Asiatic? I don't know, but like the kind of Asian features. But at the same time, it's not even like stereotypical. They don't look caricatures. They don't look like minstrels or whatever. And I just think, and also they're very appealing. Like just on a comic book artist level, I love how Cassandra Cain is like almost like real thin. Like she has no body fat on her. You can see like her 6-pack in one shot, and like it's one of those things where you can kind of imagine a skinny small Asian girl being seemingly harmless, but it's one of those things where like she's still Cassandra Cain, so she can still be as effective and deadly, even though she looks like a normal person. She doesn't look statuesque. She doesn't look voluptuous. She just looks like a skinny Asian girl who can beat your butt. And Shiva, there was a topic on Twitter a few days ago about like what's her best look, and I kind of came into her through Death in the Family and Nightfall, where she kind of had that sort of ninja look. But I really like this sort of like not even super villain, this sort of like this purple overcoat. It's so over the top and like fabulous. I just think it's really cool. And like the shot where the gun falls into her hand as she's just grinning at her would-be victim, points in her hand. It's like nothing personal. I just think that's like the coolest thing.
Yeah,
she is so cool in this.
It's a good costume that she has, or good outfit, I'll say, because it allows her to be on the streets without seeming nefarious. I mean, I think, is this the same outfit no, I suppose, is it?
I think she wears this
she had at the restaurant?
Oh, I mean, issue 8 is
oh, yeah, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Is all one day. Okay, yeah, so, I mean, it's something that there wouldn't be any red flags. But, no, I agree. I think there are awesome panels. I mean, it's so simplistic, but, well, there's a double-page spread, which is really great, and that's when I guess that's when her shoulder pops out of joint.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's just the blood splatter, but it's reversed, so the red is the background, but the black is the blood splatter.
Oh,
and
nice.
Then you just have Shiva walking away and the motion of Cassandra's arm going down. And then you talk about windblown, and the one panel, let me find it, is with her saying, "I don't kill," and just the close-up on her face. And her hair, going across her face and everything. And I agree with you, because you brought up a point that I was going to make. The fact that there are sometimes that I am looking at a character and then I'm shocked to have revealed his or her ethnicity, because I either had this idea or it just wasn't, in my opinion, presented very well. Like for the longest time, Helena Bertinelli in the Rebirth Birds of Prey, I was like, I couldn't tell. I'm like, well, her skin is darker, but that could be like, the olive tone Mediterranean. But then, no, she actually is. She is I don't know if she technically would be African American, so she still is Italian, but so she's not white. Let's just say that she's a person of color. But it just took so long until narration has to kind of help because you're like scratching your head. And with Asian characters, I think it's also difficult because there's such a fine line between almost making it like offensively so, with their eyes and everything. But I think it's done really well with Shiva here that you can tell, but it's not over dramatically so. And then because we know that Cass has a white father, you have that blending there, which I think is really well done. So I agree with you there that I think they portray these two strong Asian female characters respectfully in the art.
And also, I think it's implied in this issue or maybe the next issue. But I don't think I know. We're not supposed to know that like David Kane is her father by this point. We find that out later in the run, but not in this issue. We just think that she's just some random Asian girl. Because I'll say this. I remember telling this to Harry when I was
Harold?
Harry on the Battle on Planet X when we were talking about this character that ultimately I don't care for. It doesn't bother me that much, but like I think it's a better move to have these two characters not related. Because to me, it feels like Ray Palpatine. It feels like surely Finn is the son of Mace Windu kind of thing, where it's just like
Ray Palpatine.
People of color are all related. It's kind of racist. People of color are all related to each other, and it's like again, I came into the character I think when I was already on Earth, so it doesn't bother me that much. But I like in this story. They are not. That's not written yet. That's not written for like another several years. So like they're written just to be like. Attack like hero and rival, and I love that because they have their own understandable connection. That's not your basic comic book. My evil mother is just like I just think it's so much cooler that they just have this connection that's not dictated by blood. And again, the fact that like they seem to be just different people while still being like there's no like gender language in this. There's no like little girl or whatever. It's just like she says, my bracelet, please come and get it. It's just like I love that so much as like an action fan, as like just a comic book fan. It just to me it's so uninterested in signposting. Oh look, they're Asian, or look, they're women. It's just so pure in what it is, and it's a Batgirl comic book. To me, it's like, you read Batgirl comic books and it's like, high flying adventures and superheroes, swinging from the rooftops. No, they're like fighting about like, it's not even so much like, honor or whatever. It's like personal interest. And you don't get more interesting than that when the characters drive the story. What is the plot of this story? Batgirl gets in a fight with Shiva, but like, what's the layers and the fundamental core of the story? These two characters are at an impasse. They're not trying to kill each other by the end of it, but they kind of have this sort of like disagreement about how they should use their own personal gifts. That to me is so much more engaging than just I must stop my evil Asian mother from killing everybody. I don't know. I can never get past it's 11 o'clock and my draft is due kind of like quality of that. And to me, this is just more interesting. Oh, there's a character called Lady Shiva. Let's put her in a Batgirl comic where Batgirl's a great fighter. That's all you kind of need. And it's almost. It's genius in its simplicity, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on their relationship?
I think I like that I like the plot twist of it. I mean, we're spoiling things for stuff that has yet to happen. I think once we get there, I'll explore it a bit more because it is a bit weird. Just that she had relations with David Kane and kind of, carried her to term, but
also not a character.
and then just dropped her off and said, "See ya. Now you can do whatever you want with this thing that I raised." So it's just very impersonal, which I guess is Shiva. But I think once we get there, I'll probably analyze it a bit more. But I will say on the, just saying, oh, Shiva is Cassandra, one, I'm like, oh, wow, plot twist. But two, it's also kind of makes this world small. Like, oh, of course, one Asian character has to be the mother of the other Asian character. So that would be like without having reread those stories, my criticism of just because we have two Asian women going around and one's could be mothering age doesn't necessarily mean that she is the mother of Cassandra Cain. So I get what you're saying about that. Also, if you remember in Death and Family, when Batman goes around with sodium pentothal and says, "Have you had any children?" She says, "No." Whoopsies.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat. Yeah.
Would she have been born then?
Yeah, she would have, because if you go by the general timeline in this issue from Death in the Family, Jason would have died honestly 3 years ago. So she would have easily, but she would have already left David Kane by that point. Even though it was in 1989 or 1988, and this is 2000, comic book timeline, it would have been much more of a sliding time scale.
Yeah. Well, speaking of David Kane, as we move into episode 9, we see his wee-wee.
What? No, we don't. Are you looking for that? Do you want to?
I wanted to get your reaction. No, he is naked there. But, what's really interesting about this whole scene, number one, that he's coming at, didn't he visit him before? And couldn't he have arrested him for killing those 2 officers? That was a bit bizarre before. But think about how desperate Batman is to go visit Kane in order to get some insight into potentially teaching Batgirl. So this is, I would say, both positive and negative. You can tell, I think, from this how much Batman does care for Cass and is trying to get her back up to speed. But it also is a bit crazy. Let's go to this obvious sociopath and let's look at the reels to see how he taught. So clear, David Kane's not a master teacher either, though I guess, it's also kind of benefit of the doubt because Kane did have a hand in training Batman. But yeah, just what do you think about this scene and that he goes and looks at the highlight reels, ESPN style of Cass's training?
I wonder what Stephen A. Smith would say. I think that this is kind of I want to say, I need to find a synonym for iconic, because I don't think it's an iconic moment exactly, but it's another one that sticks in my mind because you see just the plain fact of this footage where he just shoots her from behind, this kid, and yeah, she disarms him and stuff. But to me, I think you can kind of get lost in the comic book logic of it. But when you kind of go back to Batman, Batman's like, oh my god, and Kane's like, I am so proud. Those are 2 very different reactions to that Batgirl's fathers have to this, and Kane cannot wipe the smile off his face in terms of self-satisfaction, and he's so prideful. And I talked about this before, where Batman is an offended father in this, where he basically he's seeing very explicit child abuse on film, in the way of I don't know, shooting a little girl, and he says, no, I'm not here to arrest you. I'm just gonna make you wish that I had, because you see over the next course of issues that he beats the crap out of him. I don't have any problem with him because who else knows the origins of her fighting style rather than the guy who trained her? So I don't think it's such a out of left field move for him to make.
No, but it just shows his desperation, I think.
Sure.
That he would go. Yeah. I mean, go to the source, of course, but just knowing what he knows about David, I think is interesting that he would go there.
I don't think he really cares about how much Cassandra wants to get better. I think he's doing that for her as well. It's not just my partner, she's a tool for me. I think he's doing the best he can for her.
No, yeah, I agree. I think that we see, I don't have any criticisms, I think, of Batman in this particular story, which you can write that down in your journal that I said that. But I think you, to a certain extent, have to read between the lines, but just in his actions, I can tell that he really does care for her and is also, considering I've been here before with my partners and bad things have happened, and so he doesn't want that to happen to her. But one of my favorite scenes actually in this is when they both were beat up and, they're like, oh, what happened to you at the same time? I think that's a very cute moment. But I did want to say, because you talked about the shooting, obviously, and she doesn't flinch, which is a detail that comes back up. But I'm glad it comes back because I think she talks to Tim about it. I think it might pop up at another point, or that might be the time that there's a flashback. But I'm glad that they had that detail in here because it's something I really like about Cass, that she gets shot and she doesn't flinch because she would get in trouble if she did, in fact, flinch. So we're coming to this is the one thing that I have an extreme problem with.
Oh, really?
There is, yes, are you ready for this? I would like you to explain it. There is no way in hell that Barbara Gordon would have contacted Lady Shiva on Cassandra's say-so.
Yeah, you're right.
And there's not even an argument. It's just like, can you contact someone for me, and then nothing. You know that Barbara would have gone off and said, absolutely not. That is the one thing that I have a problem with, that I don't think you can explain that away. That is just like convenient. So please let me see if you can dance around that one.
I sure can't.
Okay.
I will say that this death duel was like whenever they ask her about it, she's like, "Oh, nothing." Oracle immediately tells Batman in the later issues. It's off Panel Land, which is your favorite vacation spot. But it's evident. Yeah. It's evident that, like, basically she does this, but she goes to Bruce, is like, something's wrong with her. But she asked me to do this. But no, you're right. This is one of those things where, like, Oracle is kind of like, as a supporting character for Cassandra's protagonist role, it is kind of read like, number one, engage thrusters kind of thing, where it's just like, Oracle, please send a message to the one person that you told me not to go anywhere near last month. I will throw my hands up and admit that, like, that's convenient for the plot and doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, because that's I've got to watch out for what Barbara Gordon does, and that just was like, there's just no way. So I'm glad you agree with me. See, I don't purposely pick at things in these issues to get at you. Like, I do have, a reason to why I pick up on some of these things. Madness. So. But no, I mean, well, do you have anything else to say about 9?
Oh, 9. Probably. I mean, by far and away my favorite issue is 8, but it's all like one story. I like the scene at David Kane's. Again, like the inner monologue of Cass. I think they're meant to denote kind of emotions rather than like specific thoughts, because when she says, "Why are all the people who can help be completely insane?" That's a funny line, but I really don't think she sees Batman like that. And I'm not trying to like stand back, leave Batman alone. But I honestly, like, continuity wise, don't think she has him. She doesn't really consider him any way negative until like issue 50 when they have a falling out. Also, like, I don't think Oracle's insane. So it's,
no. So
it's one of those things where, like, I think the emotion might be there. It's like, what's up with these people? But at the same time, it's a use of language, which, again, like, this is the last issue where you see something like that. Mm-hmm. I also think that, like, again, in terms of convenience, it is a little convenient for her to just, in the blink of an eye, give her skills back. I love where it goes, so it's ultimately justified, but it does kind of feel like an out by the end of this issue. But yeah, no, again, favorite moments. I also like the moment where they both say, "You okay?" and then kind of hide their own injuries, and
yeah.
It's sweet. No, yeah, this issue actually kind of reads pretty quickly, but I still enjoy it.
Yeah, and of course her getting her suit back is also, I think, a great moment as well, and that she gave it.
I love the look on her face where she's like, ah, yes.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Well, she earned it too, and in less time, I assume, than she thought she would have, because that was a year, right, is what his original timeline was going to be. So we'll get to our overalls now. Would you like to go first? Because I can only imagine. Or do you want me to go first?
Oh, no, you go first. Save wilds for last.
Yeah. The 10, let's see, what should we make it out of 10 bracelets?
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Would that be good? Mm-hmm. 10 bracelets. Okay. So I really enjoy this. My 2 biggest issues, of course, were the time, or just, having that better explained, but it just seemed very quick. And then, of course, Barbara Gordon, I think, like I said, would not have contacted Lady Shiva. But having Cass, who is, I don't want to say overpowered, because, people make those comments and everything, but is practically perfect in her fighting style at the beginning of this run and in No Man's Land, and see her losing that, and here seeing her training and trying to get that back has been enjoyable. I actually like, training scenes in films and seeing people who have fallen down get back up again, so I really like that. I think Batman is presented very well. I don't think that he's a jerk in any of these issues, which I appreciate. See, I don't want him to be a jerk. I just point out
rarity in PTO.
Yeah, and well, write this down. Episode 190, and great scenes between Cass and Shiva. Obviously, the fighting choreography is really well done. The art is great, and Cass and Babs, those scenes are great as well. So overall, it's a great little arc, isn't it? I think I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10 bracelets.
I will agree with you.
What'd you say?
I will agree with you.
What?
My number one episode is Max and Miri get married.
Oh. Oh, it feels that way.
In my heart of souls, in the soul of my heart, it's a 10.
Yeah.
I think that on a technical level, if we're talking about like the characterization and the artwork, the artwork is just chef's kiss. It is a very good point about asking Oracle to basically send her to her death for no reason and having that happen. And the timeline, I don't think the time was a problem. I don't think it's inconsistent, but it does leave one to wonder. Just when you're reading it, it's just like, okay, when did she recover from this?
Mm-hmm.
So I will say that, on the face of everything, emotionally, this is a 10. This is to me is as best as you can read. But if you want to grade it on an objective, things that you'll be reading and then stop and think about on yourself, like those two bits, I think a 9.5 is a much more intelligent way to rate it.
Well, I'm happy that you're not completely brainwashed.
Like I said.
Oh, man. Oh, so there you go. We both agree on this, and I think this is the most positive I've been in this series so far, actually. And on Batman. It's probably the most positive I've been on Batman.
How long will this last, or how soon will this launch?
That depends on Batman.
Hope you're listening, Batman.
It's not me. Okay, so there you have it. So 9.5 from both of us out of 10 bracelets. Now we have some listener emails.
Mail time. Mail time. Mail time. Mail time. The mail's here.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail.
So we have two. One of them is from Ian Prime himself, Ian Miller. He says, Dear Stella, really enjoyed this month's episode, despite the unfortunate state of the modern Batgirl comics. Speaking of which, I think we just passed the opportunity to do, Batgirl 250. Oh, wow. Adding Steph, Babs, and Cass's runs all together. Such a shame. Oh, man. Wouldn't that have been awesome? Oh, I have never thought about that. Oh, man. That would have been really cool, actually. I must correct my boneheadedness in saying that the arc I love in Birds of Prey starts in 30. It is actually 31 through 35. All the Birds of Prey stories do sadly throw the modern stories in sharp contrast, sadly. It's not that there aren't good comics right now, but Batgirl is not getting the attention she deserves from editors making choices for creative teams. Yeah, I certainly agree there. Well, Ian, of course, you're penciled in on my little Excel document that you're going to be with me on 31 through 35, so I look forward to that. I isolation sniped Shag last week. No, I guess it was this week. And we were talking about comics, I think, and we'll talk about this, but I said with what DC I think has planned, or modern comics in general, it'll give me a break from Batgirl. And then he goes on, he's like, when was the last time you were happy with Batgirl? And I was like, probably Burnside Run. And he's like, wasn't that 2015 or 7 I don't even know. And he said, when are you going? And I'm like, yeah. So I've been in pain for all these years. He said, when are you going to find your joy? But this is the nice thing about this show, is that if it were only modern, I think I would probably have backed out by now. But the fact that I can do these, vintage Birds of Prey and these Cassandra Cain Batgirls, it's been a breath of fresh air. Like, good story that'll build up my immunity against, the stuff that's not as good. So there you go. The other person that wrote in was Donovan Morgan Grant himself.
Oh,
and so so he wrote in not via email but via comment on the website. And so since he's here, he can just read his own words to us.
Oh, you played me. Oh, let's do this. Donovan writes, what a nice name. I'd give anything for a permanent Stella Carolyn double-act podcast, especially the kind in this ep when y'all were trading shady blows at each other, XD. On the White Savior tip on BOP film, it was me that brought it up on Q&A. Carolyn had it exactly right as to why I said it was. It's not the fact that Harley, who happens to be white, saving Cass, who happens to be Asian, that completely makes it White Saviory, but the fact that the inclusion of Cassandra in the first place was fraught from the get-go. taking a strong, capable superhero from the comics and including her for the sole purpose of having one of Batman's villains rescue her, thereby weaponizing the racial diversity by erasing the agency that her original heroic vision embodied, not to mention erasing her disabilities, makes it a white savior narrative. If Cass was named Amy Jo Jackson, it would be as much problematic because the story ends up being the white hero saving the POC. But the fact remains that the film uses Cassandra Cain's name to draw more interest in Harley due to her role in the movie as it relates to Harley, that being a kid who's just as bad as her, looking up to her, and ultimately wanting to be her. Cass exists in the film to enhance the viewer's opinion of Harley as a character. That meta-narrative is the more pernicious white savior element in the movie that was wholly unnecessary and inexcusable. Well, thank you, Donovan. Stella, what did you think of Donovan's remarks?
Oh my gosh. I thought it was funny that you mentioned us trading blows there. And what's interesting is because I think she's used to it. I think everyone's used to it. I wonder sometimes how I'm perceived from new listeners. Like, she's really mean because I do dig into people, but I don't expect it from Carolyn, so whenever it happens, it's pretty hilarious. So I'm glad that you enjoyed that. I'm glad that she puts up with it, and she gives back as good as she gets. The white savior, I like how you presented it there. It's not exactly, but the way you presented it almost made me think of women in refrigerators. Is that kind of related? The fact that, a woman would be victimized in order to get to a man, but here it's just switching sex/gender for ethnicity.
Yeah, it's like it's not so much like what does the plot say, but what is the utilization? What does the decision make of it? It's like, honestly, I was thinking about this. It's like if you had Storm, and instead of being like remember the X-Men, hero in her own right, you introduce Storm as a kid who looks up with and follows around Loki. And by the end of the day, she runs off with Loki, and it's they're the best of friends. Loki, will always protect Storm, and it's like I'm trying not to swear. It's like that's wrong. You don't do that. You don't do that to that character.
Okay, yeah. So I can see it there. I'm trying to work through this white savior. I actually recently rewatched Isle of Dogs, which I absolutely loved.
All right.
And then I was trying to find some information because I was watching it with someone, the Google chatting and watching at the same time. And she actually pointed out, it took a former student of mine to point out that the girl, what's her name? I think her name's Tracy. I just watched it, so I should remember. Is a senior, and she has a crush on the 12-year-old boy. And I never noticed that before because I know she has a crush on him, but I never really connected. Like, oh, she's a senior in high school. So anyway,
I thought you meant a senior citizen. Oh my god.
No, in high school. And I thought, well, maybe it's senior and junior high. But no, it's actually senior in high school. But then I was looking up just to clarify because that's it's a little weird in skeevy. And then there were all these articles about Tracy being a white savior in that particular film. I'm like, oh no, not again. So it's unfortunate, but I get what your explanation is here, and I like that, and I think I'll be on the lookout for this a bit more.
Yeah, as long as you get what I'm laying down, because it's not.
I do.
Because people like let's say readers of color, we all have different opinions about this. Like Ta-Nehisi Coates says, we don't want to talk about race all the time. If Batman. Or let's say like Batgirl saving Kadir or Frankie. Is that white savior narrative? I guess technically, but are we really going to be mad about it because those are supporting characters in her run and she is the hero? Yeah. It's a technical thing, but your emotional investment will vary. Some people might not like it, some people might not care about it. I think this instance is something that I see a lot of people saying, well, if you're a Cassandra Cain fan, you won't like it, but otherwise, you can let it go. It's like I honestly think that it's a lot more harmful than people are presuming just because the film is as good as it is. But if you want to hear me, cry more about it, listen to 2 months ago's episode on Kunaway.
I think also, you have to look at the character. Could the character stand up for his or herself? And I think in the case of Kadir, probably, he kind of seems like a wimpy kind of guy. He probably couldn't do it on his own. Frankie, I think we have seen that she's certainly capable of other stuff. So I think that's also true. Are you taking down a notch someone who is fully capable of defending herself or himself in order to highlight this white person?
Also
doing it for them.
When I was playing The Last of Us last night, and I met this is spoilers, but when I met Sam and Henry, the moment I saw them, I knew they were dead men.
It's
black people don't last in these kinds of stories.
It's unfortunate. No, because I was watching Resident Evil Extinction with Harold last night, and the black character, well, actually there were two black characters. They both died, now that I think about it. And the Brazilian character who was played by an Israeli actor. But the main black actor, I would say, he survived from the previous one, and then all of a sudden he was suddenly attacked by a zombified cop, and so I was texting to Harold. I was like, oh gosh. Luckily he beat him, but I thought this would be really bad optics if this white zombie cop killed this black man. Luckily it did not happen, but he did get bitten by a zombified white woman. But you're right, though, that's the cliche, and I think even Scary Movie talks about it or whatever, that it's always the black guy who goes first.
Because it is. Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah. So we're going to take a break, people, and when we come back, we're going to review, we'll see, is it better than the other one? We're going to review Batgirl 45, also known as Batgirl 97, or potentially, maybe I should count everything up, and maybe it is 250. So I should say like 97/45/250, depending on your numbering. But first, Zaius' Radio Hour featuring Goldfinger by Shirley Bassey.
Wow, wow, wow.
Oh, yeah. So we are back. Before we talk about this only modern issue that we have, I did want to bring up and at least address the delays that I think will be inevitably happening. As I said at the beginning with the sponsorship, Diamond is not putting anything out, and that sort of means that if they're not distributing, then it'd probably be useless to produce comics to a certain extent unless we're going digital only. What do you think is on the horizon with our publishers and Getty Monthly Comics?
This is another part of history that we're experiencing because everyone has always talked about the death knell of the comic book industry. And this is a real blow that means something. DC and Marvel are going to be fine. AT&T and Warner Brothers owns the DC characters. Disney owns Marvel. Those characters aren't going away. But think about Boom Studios. Think about Image Comics. Think about Aspen Comics, which I know closed down publications. Think about Dynamite Comics. Not to mention the shops. Hideo Comics ran by Eddie and Kristen D'Angelini. My comic book shop, The Great Escape. Like the industry is seeing a real threat to how they do business. And maybe the $5 an issue comic was never sustainable. But like in terms of like the tradition of getting comics usually is going to change. Another thing, and again, we don't have to talk about it now, but just to kind of have it be mentioned, another interesting thing that happened is that Dan DiDio was fired. So currently the only publisher at the moment is Jim Lee.
Was he fired? Or are you just saying that?
No.
I thought he left willingly.
He was removed.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's very interesting. And we don't know why, but like he was removed from his position. So things are happening at DC, particularly with the future of like the characters and stuff. So these are interesting times that I'm not surprised that they're going to be affecting the distribution of the Bat books.
Is there an interim? I mean, is it sort of Jim Lee and Jeff Johns working together to be the interim leader of this, or is there just a void?
Well, Johns technically left after he did Rebirth #1, and he wrote up all of Doomsday Clock. But like I think he's like DC's chief creative officer, which I don't think he does that anymore. I'm not sure what he does specifically right now, but he's not what he used to be. He's not in the position he used to be. So as of this moment, as of this recording, as far as I understand, the sole publisher is Jim Lee. I don't think that'll last. I hope it doesn't last. But like to my knowledge, that's the sole publisher of DC at the moment.
Interesting. Yeah, I had not. I mean, I saw that he left. Like that was the verbiage I think that I had seen. So to hear that he was removed, I'm going to have to see that a bit more. So that's really interesting. He's been on since what, New 52 or before?
Dio came on around the time of Hush, around 2002.
Okay. Wow. Interesting.
Big time.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's a business, so it could either be that they're not doing as well or something else that's seedier. Who knows? Well, yeah, so that's, I don't know. I mean, it would all be guessing, right? I do worry about the local comic shops. I think that's a great concern because, and I was talking to Shag about this. I'll bring up a couple of things that Shag had said because I asked him about this because he was in that business and he knows a lot of stuff about it. I feel like comics are still a bit niche. I think that it's bigger now that these comic movies have come out, so people are more into getting comics. But at this current stage, it's not like the number one thing or even top 10 thing that people are worried about. You know, am I still going to get my comics?
Oh, yeah.
And so I feel like, you know, Barnes & Noble will be fine. You know, people like books. There's still the potential of ordering online and things like that. But comic stores, I just don't, you know, I don't think that's on people's radar. And a lot of times on Instagram or Twitter, you know, people are reaching out and trying, you know, donations, you know, trying to get them in there because if they go, you know, they can't pay their rent and then they're gone. But I think Shag brought this up, that it'll be interesting for the owners of those shops that even if they kick out the local comics store, it's not like they're going to get any new tenant to come in during this time either. So you almost wish that there'd be grace given to some of these businesses. I do wonder that's an interesting thing to potentially look up. Like, what does that look like for people who, even Barnes & Noble or Panera, you know, well, I'll say Barnes & Noble because we know that's kind of closed down for a certain period of time. Mm-hmm. Or can they still pay rent? And what does that look like if you can't? The other thing to consider that Shag brought up is that the reason digital comics are $2.99 or $3.99 is because the print comics are that amount of money. And so if print comics aren't happening, and they decide to still publish, there's no reason why the digital comics can't drop down their prices. And if they drop down their prices, then printing, you can't have a $1.99 or 99-cent digital comic and then have a $2.99 paper. I mean, you could, but no one's going to want to buy $2.99 when they can get 99 digital. And so if that happens, then again, you lose a lot of distributors, and the local comic book shops obviously go under as well. So these are all considerations and things I think that now it's happening. Or, they just take a break and don't, think of that, just a weird time of there aren't any new comics coming out. That's so weird. I asked Shag and Alan Middleton, like, has this ever happened? And he's like, not to my knowledge, So it's just a really weird and interesting time. I mean, I guess part of the world would be like, why do you care about comics? But there's more to it than that, because there are the people who are creating the comics, that's their job. There are the people who are selling the comics, that's their job. And you have entertainment, which again goes back to, I think, mental and emotional health, that, hey, escapism and having fun and having conversations with people like we are right now. So, this is, a big unknown.
Yeah, it's kind of the wilderness at this point, and I don't want to see, because I saw a tweet that like kind of disparaged Diamond and said it's a good thing that goes away, but I don't want to see the shops go away. Just because the reason the shops are there is because they're fans as well, as well as being a business. But like it feels like such a ruthless part of the industry that like that's the characters will probably be fine, but like the people who kind of maintain getting them out to fans will take the blows the worst, and that to me is awful.
Absolutely. So I guess depending. Yeah, I know. So Batgirl, yeah. I don't know. I feel like it's a tough time. I mean, what to do financially? You have to worry about yourself, unfortunately, and others that might be in your dependent care. And so there's always the option of donating or whatever is happening. There might still be grab and go situations for your local comic store, but always think about that. I have recently been thinking about the homeless population, because we have shelters and things around here, and I wonder what that is like. And I saw an image. I can't remember where it was, but this place painted blocks in a parking lot for homeless people so that they were socially distanced away from each other. Of course, they're still outside, which is the issue. But so I've been thinking about that as well. So, depending on if you want to donate is one thing, and then where you want to put that. But there are just a lot of people. Again, these stats are not just numbers, but there's stuff going on behind the scenes. So sorry about that depressing talk. But I just thought I'd let you know that I don't know if there's a 46, because that would come out at the end of April, so I don't know if there will be a 46. So this could be the last new one we have for a couple months, which is personally, it sounds really bad, but personally it might be good for my mental health to not have to read Batgirl, so I'm sorry about that. I guess I'll expand something, I don't know. But the cover, which kind of confused me, Who Owns Gotham? I think it's a tie-in to I'm actually really out of the loop with Batman stuff. This is the only Batman-related thing I'm reading. So Who Owns Gotham is the cover. It kind of doesn't really connect to the inside. But here we go. This is Batgirl 45 or 97 or 250. Who knows? It's called Inner Light. And we have the artist that I care for more back. So we'll talk about this. Writer Cecil Castellucci, artist Carmine Di Giandomenico, and colorist Jordi Belair. As we begin, Jason is suddenly running away from the changing homeless person, whereas in the previous issue he was already at a distance away from her when Batgirl arrives. So a bit of a disjointedness there. The woman is still alive and attracting electricity, or something is shot at her. It's hard to tell. I wrote that yesterday. I think she is attracting electricity given what I now know about everything. And she is speaking Russian. Batgirl tries to stand between the electricity and the woman, but her gadgets get shorted, and suddenly some men arrive in tactical gear, subdue Batgirl, and take the woman into a van. Batgirl gets out of her restraints and swings onto the van, cuts a hole into it, and grabs a guy to interrogate him on the way. It's like a grab and go. She is suddenly distracted when the woman is flung out of the vehicle. So Batgirl releases that guy and goes to her rescue instead, catches her. The woman says her name is Ivan, and she's a scientist. Batgirl collects some samples while Ivan is tended to by medical professionals, and Batgirl realizes that they are nanobots, which of course she has a bad experience with, that pool together into a liquid. At the clock tower, she conducts several experiments and works out at the same time when Jason contacts her as Batgirl. Wasn't she supposed to be Barbara at his apartment? A little earlier that morning, Jason returns to the alley to apologize to Ethel Ivan, now we know, when another homeless person who has taken some of the nanotech speaks Russian also and knocks Jason out. Then Batgirl contacts Jason. It's kind of confusing, and tells him to meet her. I don't know what that was about. They both investigate the alley. Babs tries to encourage Jason again. Jason defaults to Babs doesn't like me Jason mode. Batgirl goes to the hospital and visits Ethel Ivan in the morgue because she died. And she gets a text from Izzy that she is needed at Alejo headquarters. So apparently she's still not fired. Man, I should make a Twitter thing of fire Barbara. Alejo's newest directive involves power and electricity, making the city grid-free so that if any part of the city suffers some catastrophe, it won't affect the others. So I think maybe this is connected with what's going on in Batman, whatever that may be. Izzy offers a suggestion, but apparently the woman in question could barely light a bulb, as Barbara says. Barbara is called upon for some suggestions since she had her own clean energy company, which we haven't mentioned for a while now, and I wonder how Alicia is doing. But she's called upon for some other reason, which I think the test results came in from her experiments, and she has to rush out. And again, she's not fired. And apparently she's also angry at Bruce for something, since she says, I could ask him, even though I'm angry at him. Maybe because Alfred is dead? Okay, you can tell me what that is.
Yeah.
Okay, you can tell me what you are. Clearly, you've got your finger on the pulse of Batman, so you can clear up anything if you want.
My fingers on my own throat.
Oh my gosh. Okay. And I will say, even though I'm interrupting this, that it's funny. I asked you to do the plot synopsis for Cassandra, for Batgirl, and the other Batgirl, and you say yes because I don't trust you to not be sarcastic about it, but you're fine with the sarcasm I put in all of these. That's really interesting.
I don't care about these.
Oh, yeah, I guess because this one deserves it. Who knows? Okay, so she's angry at Bruce or something. So her computer, when she gets back to the clock tower, says the property of the nanotech mimics wire gold, which is rare and highly conductive. One company invests in that type of rare metal, Senya Metal, headed by, would you believe it, Dasha Belova, the person who could barely light a bulb. So convenience. Babs contacts Izzy and Vallejo saying that they should actually set up a meeting with her. She changed her mind. They go to a presentation by Dasha, who talks about bringing clean energy to the people and how she lost her mother and others to science. After the presentation, Jason...
I'm sorry. Science!
Yeah, there you go. I was waiting for it. After the presentation, Jason and his bum knee is avoiding Babs. She thinks that now she has to be the one to take the lead. Good gosh. And they all visit the tank. They all visit the tank of gold nano. Dasha has used it as prosthetics because the gold reacts with the electricity of the human body. But she wants to start threading buildings with it because the metal will be recharged by the wind and the sun. So there's your clean energy. During the tour, another metal statue is brought in, and it happens to be the homeless man who knocked out Jason. Jason contacts Batgirl with Barbara standing right next to him. Barbara dawdles a bit and gets in trouble by a guard because she's investigating. And then Batgirl returns at night and infiltrates the lab, seeing more statues. She is surprised by Batwoman, who is after a mercenary. There is a scuffle, of course, because, heroes, whenever they meet, like to get into a fight. J'accuse.
Oh, brother. J'accuse, mon petit fromage. You speak 4 languages. How come none of them is French?
Nothing's wrong with my French.
You just called me your little cheese.
That's right.
Batgirl rushes out and is attacked by KG Beast. Batwoman is knocked out, and Batgirl is going to be the next test subject of this nanotech. So next up is Statues of Unlimitations. Okay, Donovan, let us start off with happy things. Did you have a favorite panel or panels of art? Sorry.
You're forgiven for whatever you did. I liked a couple panels. I like the panel. It's I don't know what page it's on, but it's the final horizontal shot of Batgirl tied up with that cable. I just think it's very well illustrated. And I also like the panel of her with Jason Bard, Batgirl that is, where she says, "Call that girl you like," and she's like kind of looking at the camera, was like, "I'm Barbara." Like, my observation of this artwork is that what I think doesn't help the run in having you care about what's going on is that, like, I think the artwork is technically good, but there's so much distancing from the characters. There's so much like wide shots and background shots and, like, you know, shots far away that, like, it's rare to get to see the people up close and kind of get a read on their emotions. So, like, I do like those shots because they do those things.
Do you like this artist? I mean, Gian Domenico was the one that has been with Castellucci for the most part of this run. Do you like Carmine better than Tormey from the previous 2 issues with the Unearth?
No, that one barely. That one was kind of felt like weak tea in comparison. I don't think that this artist. I better get the name right because I know it's Italian. Because it reminds me a lot of Giuseppe Camuncoli from Spider-Man, but I know it's not.
Okay.
But Carmine Di Giandomenico, like, I think is a good artist. I don't think the art works well for a Batgirl title because it just looks too technical, too like overtly detailed, a little too serious. That, like, there's always these sort of, like, you know, rust color skies which aren't exactly red, and I don't want to necessarily complain about the artwork. I just think that the tone is off, and it's continually off. Like, I think it's solid artwork. I would like to see this artwork on any other title. They're doing great work. It throws me off reading in a Batgirl title where it's just uninvolving to me. It's too cold. It's too clinical. It's not. It doesn't have the interest of, because even, like, you know, if we're not going to get Babs Tarr or Cameron Stewart, I thought, like, the artist who worked on Hope Larson's run was solid. So that's what do you think?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's the issue with these stories at its core, is that Batgirl is not fun, and in the sense of, you know, we could say in the sense of enjoying, but just like the tone is heavier than I think it ought to be, because Barbara Gordon, I think, and Batgirl as the name, it should be lighter. And not to say that all these things that she goes up against is superficial, but it's all just like really serious and dark to a certain extent, or she's facing things that I think maybe she shouldn't be facing. And of course it is also redundant, just her trying off her new life again. So because I do like the art, but I agree that I think it's not, it doesn't fit with Batgirl as much as it could. I am glad Gian Domenico returned. I think that potentially points to something maybe about this story and the change or transition from what it was intended, where she went to Chicago, because the fact that we had a placement artist or temporary artist for 2 issues must mean that maybe Castellucci had those Chicago Barbara Sr. issues already done, and then that quick change happened, and then they had to get a temporary artist. So that's, yeah, interesting. I like on page 12 for me, where Dasha is talking about her past, and in the middle of this particular page, you got a close-up of her face in profile, and she's talking about the explosion that killed her parents and other scientists, and just the way that her head
profile,
which I can't tell, her profile or her head merges into that scene of the past, and I don't know if that's her mind recreating it or if there's a connection with the gold, because it does seem like there's that gold nano on her, that tech is actually creating the scene. But just I think that's a pretty cool scene. So you said you barely read Unearth, and one of my questions was, what do you think about the transition from that particular story? I don't know how well you might be able to speak on that since you weren't on for the previous episode, but do you have any thoughts on the transition from those 2 issues to this? Because there's a connection, but we really went away from it quickly.
There's a connection. I don't want to be mean. It's just like, you know,
there you have it, folks.
But, like, you know, this title is just like, how many times I got to come on here and it's like, you know, next on Batgirl, who cares? I think this is actually a decent issue. I don't think there's anything wrong with this issue, like on the face of it. But like, it's just so it's weird because I'm not trying to like, you know, the further we get away from the Burnside stuff, the more I kind of see it and I reviewed that book, but more I kind of see it in a better light because I don't care about like all this business stuff, you know, Gordon, clean energy or whatever. I thought it was kind of ridiculous. Not ridiculous, let's just say, but like, you know, they're trying to say that this character is like 21 and not 32, but you know, she has this like, you know, this rich liberals like, you know, environmental company. I never liked.
Not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore because she's Peter Parker. And they're doing big time. The heart of this run is her relationship with Jason Bard, who's a douchebag. I mean, like who likes this version of the guy running around and literally her father's coat. I mean, not literally, but like wearing Gordon's jacket and stuff. And like, see, I can be, you know, a nice guy. You know, even though I never shave. It's just, I mean, I'm being mean. This issue's fine. I think the transition of I didn't like the last story, which was why I didn't read part 2. This one is a much straightforward comic book. I don't think the scene transitions work well at all, and I don't know if it's the artwork or the writing. But like the scene where they're at they're on that, I don't know if it's a tour or whatever, and like she's noticing like, oh, those statues are like people, and then like the people are like, you're not supposed to be in this area, this you're not authorized to be in this zone, and like where'd they come from? Like I thought she was still with the other members of the tour, like. I don't know if that registers to you, but like it feels like it's just kind of just put down on there, and it's not meant to be like a cohesive reading experience. Like she like when she's in the next scene at Gotham Substation, she's on a rooftop. Very next panel, she's like punching a guy. Where'd that guy come from? You know, it's like it's a comic book. Just read it, and I feel that like. Where's the love? Where's the heart? Just in any reading experience. I know we had questions about like, you know, the timeline with Cassandra Cain's book, but like, you know, when we cut to a new scene, there's at least an establishing shot of them being there. But like, you know, where did this person come from? You know, oh, Batgirl's here, Batwoman, and she's in gray, not black. And the KG Beast is also in gray and not black. I think the writing is fine and the artwork is fine, but like I don't know if they come together for a wholly solid reading experience. Like on their own, they're fine, but like for this title, I don't know if they make for what DC would want a Batgirl title to be. It feels like it's a very straightforward, technically interested comic book that doesn't really give you a sense of why you should read this comic book.
Yeah. As someone who did read both parts of Unearth, it's strange because they left Unearth and they were hurrying back to the same place because Batgirl needed to change into Barbara, and Jason was going to profess his love to Barbara. And the assumption was that he may have done something to, you know, something may have happened because he's walking well, he's running, in fact. So something must have happened or carried over from Unearth. And Unearth was mentioned a couple times in this, but, you know, he doesn't question why she wasn't at his apartment when he got there. There's no conversation when they meet about that. It's really bizarre. So it's almost as if the only clue that Unearth happened is his ability to walk, and that there's kind of this conversation about a relationship, but even that was washed away because he had confidence all of a sudden, and now he's like, I don't think Babs likes me. So it's like all of that stuff had been washed away. So I feel like it was a poor transition, if I were to put it kindly. Agreed with the time stuff. You picked out things that are different than the one thing that I focused on is when she's fighting she's working out and she's in the clock tower. She gets that message. It says, "This is Jason. Come meet me at the alley between Broad and 80th. Something's up." And then it says a little earlier that morning, and we see him get beat up. But then after he gets knocked out, it says, it's from Batgirl. It says, never mind. That was me misreading it. So that's when he sent it. I misread it and thought that she had sent that to him, and I thought that doesn't make sense. But
what even is the purpose of doing that? Kind of making that time slide like gypsy topsy-turvy?
I don't know. I'm not really sure. And the fact that he knows that woman, there's just like a lot of bizarre stuff that's happening. Batwoman showing up out of nowhere, which I'm fine with team ups, but that really was out of nowhere. And then, of course, why does Batgirl? Did I say Batgirl showed up out of nowhere? Batwoman. Oh, I did. Okay, but why does Batgirl need to be aggressive against her all of a sudden? Is there reasoning? Do you know of any? I mean, it says she accuses her of stuff. That's why I say j'accuse.
I mean, if I'm being fair, if you can be fair to Batman, I can be fair to Batgirl, Barbara Gordon at least.
Okay.
After 2011, when has Batgirl gone up against any member of the Bat family and not just wanted to beat their ass?
Oh.
Like, I'm not seeing her
this is not
be pathetic toward this.
So you're calling Batgirl a jerk at this moment. I don't know. It always seems like when there's somebody else around afoot that her first inclination is to punch them or attack them. I don't get it.
Yeah, and it's all like, members of the Bat. It's like she'll meet Harley Quinn, like, we're the best of friends, but like if it's like Dick Grayson or Damian Wayne or like I don't know that she did the same thing to Stephanie Brown, whatever, but it's just like if she's fighting, it's like, hey, Batwoman, what are you doing here? Why are they fighting? They know each other. They know each other who the person is. And like I'm not sure. I don't even think that's a DC thing. It's just like why does the writer? I'm here for a thing. There's not even a panel of them like trying to talk before they fight. It's just like it's like they don't know each other. And this is actually the opposite of like what we're talking about with like the 2000 Batgirl story, where Steven and her got in a fight, but they can talk about what they're interested in because not everything requires fighting. Whereas this one kind of feels like it's on autopilot. It's like, okay, they start fighting. Like, is the reader even supposed to be interested in the fight because the panels are so small? The artwork is so relatively tiny, and it's distant, so where you're not invested in who's going to win. Like, do you want Batgirl to win or do you want Batwoman to win because it's tension? Like, what does a writer know why this fight is even in here?
I don't know. I mean, it seems like she's blaming her because she's been out of town, and then Batwoman mentions Alfred. So what has been going on in I mean, can you explain all of that? Because maybe it ties in with this. I guess Batwoman's been out. But yeah, what's been going on, and why would Barbara be upset with Batman? Because that maybe this explains some reason. But I do agree with you. I don't know why that. It's a cliche. I think it's really I haven't thought about it with Barbara, but that reflects very poorly on her, as well as the writing. I actually have been reading Spider-Man 2099, and there's this Spider-Man 2099 meets Spider-Man, and a special that I just read yesterday, and it was funny because I had read this yesterday as well. And Peter Parker Spider-Man says to Miguel, because once they meet, their timelines match up. He says, I know that this is the part where the heroes get into like a fight, but let's skip it because, there's more important things we need to do. So I appreciated that they address that sort of thing. But yeah, I can't explain it. I mean, it's dumb. But what do you know about the current, I guess, Batman titles and what's happening in Gotham?
Oh, God. Okay. I'm not saying that the Bat books are bad, but like that Alfred special was trash. And so the Bat family, and when I say the Bat family, I mean all the white ones, go into like this bar. It's like, oh, don't worry, Luke and Kate and Cassandra and Selena are watching the city, so we can warn Alfred because they didn't know. Batgirl, she almost like throws a drink in Bruce's face and yells at him, says, I don't care that you're sad that Alfred, your father figure, is dead, because my dad is a zombie because you went off on some sort of sex vacation with Catwoman, which in fairness is true. And when she said that, she's like, okay, she absolutely has a point. Basically, during like when Bane took over Gotham City and Batman was presumed to be dead, he was like kind of regaining himself with Catwoman. And then there's that story that I'm not even sure what's going on, where Commissioner Gordon is like a zombie and Bullock's the commissioner now. And
legitimate zombie. Interesting. Yeah. Why hasn't that popped up? That would be something crucial to talk about in this book.
You think it would? So I mean, that's a point, but like that scene. First of all, that was only there just for tension. Like, I'm so tired of her being mad at everybody. Like that's is that really how we're going to characterize? Like, this is why she can be Batgirl, because she's a strong woman who don't need no man. Like, it feels like it's that rather than something that's actually interested in her as a character, and like to illustrate how strong she is, she won't like anybody. And so, she absolutely has a reason to be mad at Bruce. That was dumb, and I didn't like it. But even that feels contrived. So it feels like a means to an end rather than just like, well, these characters are rather like again, to kind of just wax poetic about yesteryear. Like, Bruce spies on her, but she knows that she spies on him in Birds of Prey, and so that's annoying to her. That's character driven rather than these stories that don't even intersect, even though they would. And let's mention them. I need to talk to Bruce, but I'm mad at him because continuity. It's like really? you probably talk to somebody on the Justice League if you don't want to talk to him. So it's no, sir. It stinks. I don't like it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's almost pick and choose. Like, which continuities are you going to stick with, or which pieces of other stories that are concurrently going on are you going to choose to put in here or not? So, for instance, that and this Batwoman, I would have left that alone and focused. I didn't know about this Jim Gordon business. I mean, that would be more important. I mean, that's the most important relationship she has in her life. But instead, we're focusing on Jason Bard, and under the guy, she hated him under the guise that he had done what he did to her father in Batman and Robin Eternal. So yeah, I don't really get it. And this character is not the Barbara Gordon, that we're reading, which that's something that Carolyn and I, not our Barbara Gordon, but she doesn't have the history. So I don't think she has a right necessarily to be angry at a lot of the people that she's angry at. You and I may disagree on it, but I think she has a right at certain points to be angry at Batman for certain things that he does. I think he does step over the line sometimes with her, but not here in this continuity in, the way back, in our Wayback Machine, certainly. So I just don't get, I rolled my eyes when all this was happening. It's not the time nor the place to be in a scuffle with someone else who should be considered a hero, or at least you knew her then. So if you got a personal animosity, you shouldn't leave it for outside of your mission that you're currently on. So it was so bizarre. I wasn't expecting it at all, which I guess could be good or bad, but it was strange. Ugh. Trying to think. We could talk. I guess. Well, it's just a bunch of questions I have. But what do you think about the villain so far? We've only seen one issue of her, but Dasha, she has a tragic backstory, I suppose, and that's why she's experimenting on people. Do you care for this villain at all? Does she interest you at all?
No, who cares? Like, my parents are dead. Like join the club. Like whatever.
It's interesting. I think the one interesting thing about her is that we got rid of Gordon Clean Energy, and then we take someone who basically has Gordon Clean Energy, like a form of it, a facsimile of it. So it's just interesting we got rid of that, where we could have explored that to greater detail, but we're bringing in a character now as a villain who is going to use a similar type of company, but now for nefarious means. So that was interesting. KG Beast showing up. Didn't expect him in this title. I guess that's kind of cool. He gets one of his. He gets a prosthetic because of what she has, her technology. The government. How do you like these story points that she's working quote unquote with the Congresswoman? Do you think that this has? I don't know. Has this gone anywhere besides her getting elected?
Again, what is this? I don't know. I don't care.
Okay.
Because you can have things happen about. I live in this lower end apartment now, but have that be a factor in every scene, which would be inconvenient. If you're gonna do Peter Parker, do Peter Parker. Don't just tell us and then that's her status quo right now anyway. So no, I don't care.
Okay, it's. It's one thing after with Vallejo. It's like each time we see her, she's got a new agenda, and not like a negative agenda, but something like, this is what I'm going to focus on for this issue. So in this case, it's involving how to protect the city. I assume from stuff that had happened with Bane, because maybe he destroyed some stuff and it shut down a bunch of city blocks, so she's trying to make each city block self-sufficient. But, I just don't, there is no reason why Barbara Gordon should not be fired. And she's a volunteer, so she's not even in a paid position, but she's so flaky. And then, of course, we have Jason and Babs, which, gosh, I really hope they do not get together, but we're being forced to endure this. I don't know if anybody likes. I'm sure there is someone out there who really likes this, but this is not my Jason Bard. And it's just he had his confidence at the end of the other issue, and now he's back to, Babs doesn't like me. And now Babs is the one. It's so weird. It's like she's being convinced that she likes him, so now she's got to make the first move, or second, because I still think she's the one who kissed him. Yeah, any thoughts on that relationship?
I do have thoughts on that relationship, actually.
Please!
It feels like a slow train towards a destination that you don't want to go to, but you can't get off of. It's just because What is it with them? Like, it's like every writer is like, we got to have Babs hooked up with somebody. I can understand wanting to do that because it's, dynamic. It's like sequential storytelling. It's like a soap opera, that kind of stuff. I don't know. Has the editor on this book? How long has this editor been on the book compared to the editor that's been on at the start of Rebirth with Hope Larson? I mean, like, maybe not. Let's not have her a rogues gallery of romantic potentials. It just, I don't care about that either. What's funny is that, like, I'm actually reading this off a website, and all the comments are talking about is like, the Jason Bart thing in comparison, like, oh well, when Dick cheated on her with Starfire in the 80s, but that's not true. And like people start getting in like this Dick versus Corey argument, and it's like no one's really talking about like whether Jason Bart even like compares. So it's like we'll be interested in reading this book if you do that. Like honestly, like it's not so much whether we ship it or not. It's just like make it interesting. Like I do find Jason Bart's kind of like him trying to be a good person to be moderately interesting. Not so much that I would say you need to read the book, but like it's an idea. But to me, it's all centered around gearing them towards each other as a romance. And that to me, I find to be an inelegant way to write either a book or a romance.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, everyone already knows my thoughts that I'm not on board with it. So I guess we'll see what would happen. I don't know. Maybe we'll have a break in the next 2 months. I don't know if there'll be a 47 or not. So final thoughts and grade, and I guess we'll give it at a gold statues.
I mean, if you're coming in and you like this comic book is in front of you and you're reading it, you're not going to dislike it. But if you have opinions on, not even opinions, if you give a crap about Barbara Gordon, you're just going to I think sigh. So I would give it like a 6.5.
6.5. I will say that I thought that this was better than Unearth. It leaves me again with questions. I think that there are some things that happen unnecessarily. I do like that Gian Domenico is back. I do like his art better. Yeah, better, but not by much, I suppose. So I'm going to give it a 6, I think. 6 out of 10 gold statues. Wow. Okay. There we go. So now over to Chris for his Cornucopia of Curiosities.
That's like wishing things were the way they were 48 weeks ago. Thank you very much, Stella. Hello, Bat fans. Welcome once again to the Chris's Cornucopia of Curiosity segment. Thank you very much for downloading, and as always, thank you for not fast-forwarding. My name is Chris, and I am very glad to be with you. Today, I'm reviewing Batman Adventures number 29, and in the Night Watch segment, I look at Nightwing number 70. Batman Adventures number 29 was cover dated February 1995 and cover priced at $1.50. For this one, we have a creative team of Kelly Puckett as the writer, Dav Medin is credited as guest artist, Rick Burchett was the inker, and Rick Taylor was the colorist. The Batman was created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger. This story was reprinted in the Batman Adventures trade paperback, Volume 4, and does appear to be available on DC Comics app for $16.99 for the entire trade itself. However, the individual issue is not. And our story today is entitled Demon Seed. Act 1, Secret Hopes, Secret Fears. Ra's al Ghul is missing. A minion tells Talia that her father was last seen in Macau. Meanwhile, at stately Wayne Manor, home of millionaire Bruce Wayne, Alfred notes that Ra's has been missing for a week and wonders what future Bruce will have with Talia now that Ra's is out of the picture. Batman then begins to track an item called the Tesla device, which has been shipped from Gotham City to Macau. Smash cut to Macau, where Bruce Wayne attends what I call a masquerade casino, where he meets the owner named Young, who deals in imported and exported goods. Young is called away, and Bruce cashes in his chips, and Bruce runs into Talia, who has just stolen a bag from a back room. Young bursts through a door and says, "Get her!" Act 2, Wayne. Bruce Wayne. Bruce and Talia flee the casino with gunfire at their backs and get into a speedboat. Bruce changes into Batman. He tells her she stole an experimental field generator that someone named Nariant wants to smuggle into Nepal, who is building a generator to activate it and thus rule the world. Batman hurls a batarang at the baddies, following them, and Talia says she took the device so she could exchange it for information on her father's whereabouts. Batman agrees to help her. The trail leads to a defunct wedding parlor, and Talia finds her father's pendant, and Batman stops her from killing the man who possessed it. Act 3, Till Death Do You Part. In Nepal, Batman and Talia debate on destroying the device. They find a cave and attack the minions therein. Talia finds Young and the control room. Batman catches up and asks if Talia got any information. Talia says yes. The device can vaporize cities, defense bases, and labs, and Nerion can use it to hold the planet hostage. Batman then realizes that Talia was doing all of this to carry out her father's plan, and is shocked. Talia says she owes her father no less. Ra's emerges from the shadows and apologizes to Talia for his deception to her, saying that Batman kept him under constant surveillance, and this way he could carry out his plan. But before the device can be activated, Batman destroys it. Talia starts to cry and starts to explain, calling Batman Bruce, but Batman says there's nothing left to say as he walks away. The end. My notes: the cover depicts Batman and Talia fleeing in a speedboat while being fired upon, with the specter of Ra's al Ghul looking at them against a black night sky. I like it. As a Batman-Catwoman shipper, I keep forgetting how this title really kept the Batman-Talia shipping alive. The relationship is very real, but seems beyond repair from here going forward. Tiny quibble: it's not clear, to me anyway, why everyone is masked at the casino, but it makes the scene look more interesting and keeps Bruce's identity under wraps. We have a MacGuffin device, and the characters seem to fill in the blanks and answer any internal questions that I had as the story moved along, at times conveniently and perhaps implausibly so, with Bruce and Talia being where they need to be when their paths initially cross. The story was fast-paced, and I do like some globe-trotting Batman stories every now and then. I doubt the readers were fooled that Ra's was really missing, and we all figured out who Nerion really was, but we have to suspend some disbelief to make the story work, and here we are. There is build-up and anticlimactic takeout of the weapon/MacGuffin, which just gets us to Ra's devious manipulation, but more telling, Talia's loyalty to her father that will never change. I really didn't notice any change in the artwork with Dev Medin's pencils. His other credits include Young Heroes in Love. We get some great Batman in Shadows panels, and he did an excellent job here. I initially thought of giving this a 7.5 out of 10 bats, but I'm going to change my score on the fly and give Batman Adventures number 29 8 out of 10 bats for Ra's plan. Now, for everyone's favorite segment within a segment, it's Night Watch. That's where I look at the current issue of Nightwing from a shipper's perspective. At the time of this recording, Nightwing number 70 is the current issue. Writer Dan Jurgens, art Ryan Benjamin, and Scott Hanna. Spoilers ahead. After a 5-page recap bringing us up to speed, the Ersatz Nightwings talk in a hospital room by Zach's hospital bed. Ersatz Nightwing Sap has a violent encounter with the Joker. Richard Grayson tells B that he still is having headaches. B wonders if Richard should reach out to Barbara, but he says he doesn't know if he can trust her yet. And the Joker finds the memory crystal that Nightwing foolishly leaves in B's bar that Dr. Haas used to manipulate Nightwing's memories. To be continued. Okay, the big question: why didn't Dick keep the crystal? Only for the Joker to find it. The Joker appearance had the issue sell out quickly in my local area, and I'm wondering if any of the other readers out there had problems finding a copy. As for Dick and B, it was a bit sad that B has more faith in Barbara than Dick has. Very sad indeed. As for Dick and B shipping, there really isn't a lot here, other than some really tame soap opera stuff. With that, I'm going to give the story a lukewarm shipper alert. This concludes this edition of Night Watch, and this segment within a segment for now, as I'm just not sure when we'll see Nightwing again, or any new comics anytime soon for that matter. And with that, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the recent events with the current coronavirus crisis. No doubt it's affected you and your loved ones. I hope you all are getting by day, somehow, and doing the best you can. I've lost 2 jobs due to business circumstances in the past, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone, especially during these times. I feel for anyone who's lost a job and or is struggling to get by. I hope you can find some enjoyment and some distraction where you can and when you can. You have my thanks for listening and my hope going forward. Listeners, don't forget you can find Stella on the Required Reading Podcast. I'd like to give a shout out to my friends the Sutherlands. Be sure to check out their fine podcast on the Rad Adventures Network. If you have any feedback for this segment or for this podcast, please head over to the Batman Universe website. And if you'd like to lend your support to the Batman Universe website, which has news, features, and a fine family of podcasts, follow the links on Patreon or by making a one-time donation with a link on the homepage. Thank you for your support. Listeners, you can also find me on the Professor Frenzy Show podcast, where my friend Jerry has some great upcoming projects. You can also find us with our Memory Minute Monday and Professor Frenzy's Bedtime Stories podcast, as well as YouTube. And, hey, please do us a favor. Check it out. And if you like what you see, click the like button and subscribe. Thank you very much. Who has a treasure map to a giant pearl? What are the origins of the Professor, Mr. Nice, and the Mastermind? Will the next issue be good if Batman appears only in one panel? Don't fail to listen to the next podcast where the answers to these polite, poignant, presumed plausibles will be publicly pacified perfectly next time. Same Stella feed, same Stella site.
Is he going to review the Batman the Next Adventures series?
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm potentially. I mean, I wouldn't put it past him. When did those start coming out?
Okay, so the first one came on digital this week, and I read it. Batgirl's not in it, but she'll be in it. It's a limited series, so I figured that he would. I think it's just a matter of time.
Oh, well, I guess we'll see. Do you know if 47 is scheduled to come out still?
I don't think it is, but I'm not positive. I'm on the TBU Discord. We're talking about all the books have been delayed at least a couple months.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. And next is our literature recommendations. I had to scroll with my eyes through everything, be sure I didn't miss anything. So, Dawn, are you reading anything in this world where we can't do much besides play video games, read, and maybe take classes?
Indeed, I am. Later on this evening, I'll have a meeting via computers with my Barnes & Noble book club, where the book of the month that we're reading is An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. It's about a couple in the South, Celestial and Roy, and their perspectives kind of go back and forth between where they thought their relationship has gone, their particular origins. And to be honest, I'm actually not technically done with it yet, but I really am enjoying it, particularly the prose. It's a very swelling, pretty emotional book, very well written, sad in some places, and sad often. And I was very taken with it by the get-go, so I would recommend An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Okay. And as I mentioned, I have been reading some Spider-Man 2099 as a palate cleanser for some things. And I read it's the classic, I should say. So I read volume 4, and then I have 2 issues left in the Spider-Man versus Venom trade, which I guess technically is volume 5. So we just found out that Tyler...
Oh, yeah. I forget his name, too.
Shoot, what is his last name? That's bad. I had just read something, and I was going to critique Tyler...
Tyler Stone.
No. Thank you. Tyler Stone is Miguel's father. That was a big reveal. And then awkwardly and grossly, Dana starts hooking up with Tyler Stone and moves in. That's so weird. It's weird, period. But number 2, it's weird because she was engaged to his son, and now but I guess she didn't know, so I guess we can excuse her. But that's very bizarre. But I don't know how long it goes on because I'm just collecting the trades, so I guess we'll see when the next one comes out. And I also read a Lumberjanes original graphic novel, which one you said about Boom Studios, I thought of My Dear Lumberjanes and other indie stuff that I read. Let's see, Lumberjanes. It was called, I have to go on my Goodreads, The Shape of Friendship. And loading. While adventuring in the woods, Joe, Mal, Molly, April, and Ripley discover the hiding place of a group of magical creatures called Pukas, and they think they found new friends. But what they don't know is that the Pukas are tired of hiding, and they found the perfect way to join the outside world by impersonating the Lumberjanes themselves and taking over camp. To reclaim their identities, the Janes will have to work together to remember who they really are, and to help another group of friends accept themselves too, in a story about looking inside yourself and learning to love who you meet there. And funnily enough, last night I started Ulysses by James Joyce, and by the first page, actually, I thought, what even am I reading? And I tweeted about it, and I've received more tweets by people I don't even know from that tweet. I don't know if it was when I tweeted, which was late at night, so maybe time zone issues, or people are just interested that I'm reading Ulysses, but boy, people have come out of the woodwork. I don't think I'm going to be recommending it, but I at least wanted to tell you that I'm reading it. But my big read that I did to update you. Remember, I wanted to get these huge books out from the library, and I put holds on them, but then the library shut down. That's the update. They shut down before I could get it. So now I have to do digital, which I don't really like. But the one that I got from my library was War and Peace, and I finished it, and I actually really liked it. So it's by Leo Tolstoy. I did actually, yes. I mean, it's 1,200 pages, so you've got to put in your time and effort. But in Russia's struggle with Napoleon, Tolstoy saw a tragedy that involved all mankind. Greater than a historical chronicle, War and Peace is an affirmation of life itself, a complete picture, as a contemporary reviewer put it, of everything in which people find their happiness and greatness, their grief and humiliation. The war stuff is fine. It's kind of like Les Mis. You kind of get through the war stuff in order to get to the character moments. So the character moments are really what I was looking forward to. So much shipping. So much shipping. It was lovely. It was lovely. I mean, Tolstoy and I would get along. But I enjoyed it. I mean, you got to put in your effort, your work. It was actually, compared to Ulysses, that I'm only 100 pages in, War and Peace reads nicely and smoothly. Just like Les Mis kind of surprised me too with how nice that is. So not much effort. You just have to put in the time because 1,200 pages. So I recommend that. And I also want to say, last episode, I mentioned Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and that is currently on Hulu. So again, I strongly urge you to watch this beautiful tale. But it will, it affected me for days afterwards, so maybe it won't be it's so beautiful, but still you're going to be affected. So it depends on what your mental health is like right now. But then I've been going through all these series because I have to sit in front of my computer waiting for students to email me or whatnot. And so I've been racing through series. So I tried Gentleman Jack on HBO. And this is interesting. I'm bringing it up because I talked about the female gaze, I think, to a certain extent with Portrait of a Lady, and it's a beautiful example of a positive female gaze. But with Gentleman Jack,
them females.
Boy, did I felt exceptionally uncomfortable for, was it the first episode or the first 2 episodes? And it got better. So I was like, I'm going to make it through these 8 episodes. But it follows Ann Lister, and it goes through it uses her diaries / journals as the historical artifact of what they're basing this on. But Ann Lister is pursuing Anne Walker, and it's really interesting because of How Ann Lister is presented. I like Ann Lister in how she's nonconformist and fights for women's rights, kind of, at least in like her presentation and being who she is. And they do talk about an act that they're trying to put in of, preventing women from voting and things like that. But her pursuit of Anne Walker is like, if it were a man, our hackles would be up, because like in her space, looking at her as if, like I'm going to devour you kind of thing. And so I do at least want to say, as a feminist, and Donovan's a feminist too, that even though we look for equal opportunities and things like that, we're also going to stamp down on you doing things that you should not do, that men should not do. And so I think it's the second time they meet, she was like asking her about, have you ever kissed anyone before? Have you ever wanted to? And this Anne Walker is 29 years old, but she's got her own issues. And so her innocence kind of makes her seem, in my opinion, younger. So that was another reason why I felt, because Anne is like 41, I think. Anne Lister is 41. So Anne Walker's like nervous about this, and she asks Anne Lister, have you? And Anne Lister's like, every time I'm over here. And I'm like, this is too much. This is too much. Like I said, it gets better. But I just want to say that that's a bad example of, I think, the female gaze, because in her masculinity, it was, I think, inappropriately directed. And because she's a female, she gets away with it. But anyways, all that to say that you could watch Gentleman Jack. I think it gets better, but I have several questions. And she not once in the whole series says, I love you to Anne Walker, even though Anne Walker says, I love you to her. And there are moments that she could have, and I think it's very intentional, but it worries me for season 2. What'd you say?
Hit the player, hit the game.
Oh, man. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could talk about that at length, but I shan't do it here. Oh, well, we made it, Donovan. We made it.
How surprised are you?
I'm always surprised that these go long. I mean, we're at 2.5 hours right now. I always think, oh, this will be a breeze. But no, it was a fun. I mean, I think we had a lot of good discussions. I personally think that, not to toot my own horn, but I think that it was a good episode.
I'd like to agree. I can tell it's a good episode whenever you have that hacking cough whenever you're taken by surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, until the last possible second, I did not think I would not give this story a 10. But you.
Well.
Yeah, you made your case. I will say, because I brought it up earlier, and this is a tangent, but like in this issue, Batman dies. That thing, which shows that. Like,
oh yes.
Because that was a month-long thing of just having that on the cover. So that Birds of Prey story is definitely sort of in the future of this Batgirl story, because every Bat book in DC for a month had that in the issue Batman dies kind of thing. Now he's not even in that Birds of Prey story. There is a dream sequence in Batgirl, but otherwise, yeah, it's like it would always be this sort of like this doesn't count kind of like a little header for that. I remember when it was going on. I just wanted to elucidate that, but otherwise, I love this as much as I predicted to, and thank you very much for having me.
Of course. And next, when Donovan has already granted me permission, I think, but when Donovan, because he's in fall right now, right? On The Last of Us, you said? That when he hits winter, he's going to do a share play again, which it was so good for that first hour, and then you only get an hour of share play, and that kicks you off, and then all of a sudden we couldn't get on because of low connectivity. So I hope it doesn't happen. But I'm really, for people who have played that game, you know why. I want to watch him play winter. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And, before we go, of course, please let people know how they can find and support you.
Thank you. Questions we don't have answers. KinoAnswers.com. Our most recent episode was a 2-part special on the end of Steven Universe and what we can learn from this show now that it's done. It was myself, Harry, and Joshua Lappen-Bertoni for the first part, and myself and my old friend from college, Kelly, in the second part. Both are separate recordings. You can choose which ones you can listen to, or listen to both. Additionally, you can find my work on DCUniverse.com. I write articles for them. My most recent article, as of this recording, was on the brief but very good Jim Starlin Batman run from the 1980s. And I will write in the future on other runs you can binge if you're kind of like sitting around in your room and you want to read some comics. The aforementioned Josh wrote a similar article about Peter David's Supergirl, so you can check that out as well. And you find me on Twitter at DonoDMG1.
Are you only allowed to do, as I will call them, vintage articles? Are kind of the modern tales sacrosanct because people are still writing them, and so DC wants to protect and be protected?
I mean, the idea is to like write for stuff that people can read and then go out and read the comics. And they have stuff up to like last year. Like they just added Detective Comics 1000 to their server because that came out last year. Like they'll have the books, but like the last 12 months of new comic books they don't have because they want to give the retailers a chance to sell them. So yeah, I could write about Batgirl, but it would be like in a probably like during like the James Jr. storyline of last year or whatever was like this time last year.
Gotcha. I just wondered, if you wrote something of like times that Batgirl spoke with her fists instead of her words against fellow teammates.
Thank you for giving me a pitch idea.
Would that be frowned upon? Would that be frowned upon or not?
No.
Well, I guess do you have to wait because of the recent one? I guess you could say, in light of Batgirl 45, let's look back at the times. I guess you could do that. So
honestly, thank you very much. That's a genuinely good idea. About the times that like Barbara Gordon just hauled off and punched somebody for no reason.
Yeah. Well, if you could, please mention my name in it. That would be lovely. Thanks to my friend Stella for giving me the idea. I think next month is our friend himself, the man who doesn't like to wear belts or proper footwear while hiking.
Really?
Joshua Lappenbert. I think I'm pretty sure we're doing the Batman Chronicles story that he wants to do, where it's revealed that Jim knows. And I'm also going to do a cleanup episode of random titles, like a Flash annual and something else. Maybe a Nightwing annual? I don't know. Flash special and a Nightwing special? Something. A bunch of cleanup issues along with. But the main event is going to be that Chronicles. And then in June, to look forward to, it's Professor Allen coming on to do Officer Down, that storyline. So that's something to look forward to there. And I'm considering, I don't know if this is bad optics, but I think it's probably just time to do it. I'm thinking about doing a special of Y: The Last Man, and I'll have a guest on for that as well. It just involves
has Carolyn read that?
All of those. Has Carolyn read Y: The Last Man?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I've not finished. I've not read all of it, but it should be good for it.
So we'll see about that, because that's certainly, it's a post-apocalyptic too, but just in a different way. Well, remember, you can send any questions or comments to batgirltheoracle@gmail.com. You can, of course, hit up Donovan, or if you have something to send my way, I can forward it to him. You can also find the show on Google Play and Stitcher. Oh, and Donovan would appreciate your congrats, and I think any sort of good job or encouragement to get through The Last of Us. Like the show on Facebook, or follow it on Twitter at Batgirl the Oracle. Follow the Batman Universe on Facebook and Twitter as well, and support it by subscribing to Patreon. Once again, thanks to Mile High Comics for sponsoring Batgirl the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast. Thank you, Donovan, for coming on and being a delightful host.
Thank you very much for having me, and I told you I could do it. You doubted me showing up, and I did it.
He sure did. And until next time.
Fight on, cast lovers.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Just plain Barbara Gordon, masquerading for a lark as she rides into the night on her special Batgirl cycle. Who knows? Is the dynamic duo destined to become the triumphant trio? Only time will tell us more about this dazzling daredoll.
I love a happy ending, don't you?
knows how everything should happen. She's very much a planner, and I feel that too. But I've learned, especially recently in the last 5 or 6 years, the damage that your own plans can do if you're not really listening to other people. And so I really relate to the way she learns that damage and is able to become a better person. And so that moral arc of Emma. And also, I just think that, and I should add, this is probably going to involve spoilers for the novel. So if you haven't read Emma...
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
You should definitely read Emma.
Yeah.
But to spoil it, I really like the main romantic couple of Emma. I think they're very... It's such a good friendship that turns into a romantic relationship with a lot of emotions, and that really is affecting to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to think of which character, because I think that I've read all of Austen's stuff, because I have this huge tome that goes through all of it, and I didn't read it all in one sitting, I couldn't do that, but I'm pretty sure that I've read all of them, if not pretty close. Northanger Abbey is actually my favorite one. I do love the Gothic romantic aspects of that. I think that's just the genre that I tend for, because I mean Jane Eyre and things like that. But yeah, once you said Emma's the character that you feel like you identify most with, I was trying to think about which character in Austen's Rogues Gallery, we'll call it, I identify with the most. I'd have to think about that. You'd think it would actually almost be Emma because of how much I ship people in the fictional world as well as in real life, that I would be, the matchmaker that Emma is. But yeah, so we are similar in that we've seen several adaptations, and actually went online just before we started talking to see when adaptations they actually started, and I saw it went back as early as 48, I think I saw, and then there were a couple TV ones, and then it moved on up, and then we get to the first major one, which I guess was Gwyneth Paltrow in 96, and the same time there was the television version with Kate Beckinsale, and then of course we have Clueless, which we can't forget about. And then we have one that I think both you and I really love, that the BBC redid. When was that, in 2009. 2009, okay. 2009. And then we get to this one with Anna Taylor-Joy that just came out. So which adaptations of all the ones that you have seen do you enjoy the most? Yeah, let me see my data here. Yeah, 1948 was the first one with Judy Campbell as Emma. Then in 1960, there was a television miniseries. And then in 72, there was another miniseries. And then we get to our Gwyneth Paltrow in 96. 95 was Clueless. Yeah, which ones have you seen? Which ones do you like and feel like they're pretty good? And then we'll spend the bulk of our discussion on the recent one.
Well, I've actually seen the 1972 one. I don't know that the 48 and 60 ones are available. And I also saw one 2 years ago that was a filmed musical with Kelly Barrett, who, if you've seen The Punisher on Netflix, she plays the Punisher's dead wife.
Oh.
And she played Emma in the filmed musical version. Of the ones that I've seen, I can't pick a favorite between the Kate Beckinsale, the Ramala Gary miniseries in 2009, and the current Anya Taylor-Joy film. Those are the three that I think have enriched my enjoyment of the novel the most.
Okay. So now I want to know, and this is something that I was curious about because I saw that on Twitter when you had put those up there. It is curious that the Gwyneth Paltrow one is missing. And so I wonder, what is it about that particular adaptation? And I'm asking more out of curiosity because I don't have really, I have my two favorites, I think. So I have no dog in the fight. But what is it about that one that it doesn't make it on your favorite list?
Well, for Gwyneth Paltrow Emma fans, I don't want to trash the movie. I think that it has many excellent qualities. The score by Rachel Portman is lovely. The acting is uniformly good. The direction's quite creative. My problem really comes down to the script, and there's a lot of humor in that version, which is very broad. And to me, I've always thought that Jane Austen's humor should be played more subtly. So an example, and there's more than one, but this is the one that just comes to mind more readily, is when Emma is about to receive the proposal from Mr. Knightley, but she doesn't know it, she makes a comment about, oh dear, because she thinks he's going to talk about Harriet. And then she tries to hide that with a line about how she's thinking about venison stew. And that is a really, it's just a very unsubtle joke to me. And it didn't feel appropriate for Jane Austen. Now, it does feel more appropriate for someone like Charles Dickens, and the same writer-director adapted Nicholas Nickleby in 2002, and I thought that worked much better. I very much enjoyed that film. But for Jane Austen, the script is just operating on a level that I think is more obvious and plays to more stereotypes than I think really matches with my love of the novel.
I would say, though, that this most recent adaptation is a bit more open with the comedy than I've seen in the past with Emma, though.
I would agree. I think that there is a lot of even almost slapstick, but the verbal humor doesn't do that. The script tends to hew more closely to the novel in the language for me. So that's why I don't have that same reaction.
Do you feel like Emma is the most, I'm going to say comedic, but, you know, we're not talking about like it's an out-and-out comedy, but the most comedic of all Jane Austen's novels, or at least the ones that you've read, like the most witty?
I mean, I think in terms of pure dialogue wit, I'd say Pride and Prejudice is probably the best. Elizabeth and Darcy just have so much intelligence, and they're so antagonistic towards each other. Now, Emma and Mr. Knightley do have some great lines to each other, like, of course, the famous better to be without wit than to misapply it as you do. But there's not quite the same spark because it's a different type of relationship. So I would say that Pride and Prejudice for me is the wittiest.
Okay.
But Emma to me is the most whole. It has the most completed world, the most fleshed out relationships, and the deepest psychological journey for me.
Gotcha. Okay. I did forget about the YouTube. Did you ever see that, the Emma approved YouTube series?
Oh, yes. Emma approved. Well, it had really good actors. It's just that the first, I would say 20 episodes were just not very well written. But then the last 20 episodes I thought were really well written. So it ends well, but it starts really shaky for me.
Yeah, I would agree. You have to hang in there. And the only reason why I watched it is because I really liked the Pride and Prejudice version, which I think was called the Lizzie Diaries, but I'm not sure, or Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which was really, really well done. And I was hooked on there for right from the beginning. But you kind of have to hold on to the Emma approved until it gets to, I think, like you say, kind of the middle portion, and then it picks up and it holds on to you.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, I would say that it's been a while since I've seen the Gwyneth Paltrow and the Kate Beckinsale, but I don't think they had any lasting impact on me. So I would say the Romola version in 2009 is really up there for me. Clueless, if we're talking about adaptations, but of course loosely and, you know, more modernization, I think is up there for me. But this 2020 release, I was excited, first of all, because I like the lead actress. I feel like, well, I've seen her in two things now, and I'm trying to think of what the other one was. But definitely I saw her in Split, which was a really interesting film. And was a completely different character. The only thing I saw about this film was one trailer when I went to go see a film with my mom. I think it was Little Women, actually, in an art house film. I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And that girl is completely different from, you know, how I saw her in Split. So going into this, what were your expectations? What did you see before you went into the film? And what were you hoping to see when you were actually in the film watching?
Well, I saw Anya Taylor-Joy in Glass, the sequel to Split. I actually haven't seen Split, but I really liked her in that. So that also was an intriguing thing for me, being a fan of her. And I'd seen both trailers for it, and I actually was very excited because it was my favorite film. I mean, my favorite novel. Right. And I didn't have I love the Kate Beckinsale and Romola Gary version, and I very much enjoy Clueless and Emma Approved, and I even enjoy most of the other ones. Those are the two that are really close. But I didn't have one. So it's not like Pride and Prejudice where people say, oh, the Colin Firth version or the Keira Knightley version are their favorite. Like, I didn't have one that it was going to dethrone. I was looking for something to add to my experience. And I got that. There are things that I could quibble with or question about this one, but the acting and the writing and the directing were all just so well crafted, and I could see the intentions of loving the book and sharing that love with the audience. I didn't feel like they felt they had to dumb it down or make it more modern. They just loved the book, and they felt the book was strong enough to give it to the audience through their lens, and I thought that was really good. It was really exciting and funny. As you said, it really emphasizes that comedy, but it also doesn't skimp on the romance and the social commentary. Like, all of those things are in there in just a really nice, well-crafted film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think from the trailer, I was expecting an adaptation that I think was different than the other ones, like a fresh take on it. And it's hard to do that because when you have such a beloved novel, like even looking at Greta Gerwig's Little Women that came out this year, you know, what can you do to change things up? And she messed with I shouldn't say mess, that sounds negatively, but she
presented the timeline differently.
Yes, differently, correct. And so I wondered what is this Emma going to be about? And one moment in the trailer that sticks out in my mind is when it's not Miss Fairfax. Well, what is her aunt's name?
Miss Bates.
There you go. Miss Bates she's like calling to her outside the carriage, and there's just this moment where Emma just like flicks the carriage window open, and it opens so slowly, and she just turns to her. And I just thought, okay, so this is, from that moment I got a sense of what this adaptation was going to be. And right from the beginning, I have to say that just the colors and the costuming, so bright, and it was such a beautiful film visually to look at, which I really loved, and it was so smartly written, and I was just engaged the entire time. And when we got to the one moment that I always dread in every adaptation, which is the picnic moment, because I hate Emma. I hate Emma in that moment. I was like, oh no, here it is. Still really well done, and you feel the emotion from everyone there. But yeah, I really liked this. I think perhaps more than I thought I may have, but I liked that it was a fresh take, but not completely doing something new. Yeah. So I'm happy with this,
I agree.
I'm glad that you liked it too.
Well, one of the things I'm always worried about with a Jane Austen film is because every single novel has been done, although I think Mansfield Park has never been done respectfully. Well, okay, I haven't seen the 1980s miniseries of Mansfield Park, but I don't like 1980s miniseries very much. So, but I would say that Persuasion, for example, got a really great adaptation in 1995, and then they did a new one in 2007, and I felt that everything they did in 2007 had already been done better in 1995. So I'm always worried about a rehash or doing the same thing. Whereas, the 1995 Pride and Prejudice, it was very much of the book, but it also expanded the world of the book. But the 2005 took a completely different direction. It was much more romanticized and much more, passionate. So that was a different take. And so I was very curious what you would do with Emma, which, as I'd said, I'd seen like 5 different versions of. What would be new? And I think the emphasis on both humor, but also passion, because there's a real, emotional current. You see Mr. Knightley just throw himself on the ground in passion. And I think that was a really good new take that was still true to the novel. So they didn't do like a non-chronological approach like they did in Greta Gerwig's Little Women, but they did have a new voice while still being true to Austen's voice. So that, I was very impressed at that. I didn't think that they could really do that, and I'm glad they surpassed that expectation.
Yeah, and that dance scene was so well crafted because as Knightley and Emma are dancing, you can see this transition from friendship, or at least something buried underneath that friendship, and then something starting to bubble to the surface, and then it sort of reaches this climactic high when he comes into the yard, but then of course everything is thrown off because the gypsies caused chaos, as they do, I suppose. The father was perhaps my favorite character in this one. I think Bill Nighy did an amazing job because he seems like an eccentric person in real life anyways, and just to add to Mr. Woodhouse's eccentricities, I think he did a great job, especially with the draft. You feel a draft and those shades being moved around and all of that. I mean, one of the best moments, I have to say.
I completely agree. I was actually very worried about Bill Nighy because I love him as an actor, but he's a very vigorous actor. He has been in a lot of action films, and even though I think he's in his 70s at this point, he just has such energy to him. Yeah. And to me, Mr. Woodhouse is a very sedentary character. He's not always jumping up around. But he really convinced me with that recurring theme of feeling drafts and being very concerned about everyone getting colds from drafts. Yeah. And the visual device of the screens that the servants would have to carry around. That's both a social commentary, but is also just really funny. Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I think Mr. Woodhouse was very well done, and he definitely adds to that legacy of characters because he's been played by really good actors like Michael Gambon in the Romulan Gary one. Yeah. He was very emotional in that one. So I thought this was a good, fresh take that emphasized the humor, but also had those quirkiness, and also, you can tell he cares about Emma, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and certainly doesn't want to lose anybody. He lost his wife, and then he feels like he lost his eldest daughter to marriage, and so doesn't want to lose Emma. Another great scene with him was that dinner party, and the pastor, the religious official, how he said, "I think it's going to snow," and everyone at the table turned their heads at the exact same moment to look at Mr. Woodhouse because they knew how he was going to react, and then everyone leaves in under a minute. They get out of there. So that was really good. Emma is a complicated character, in my opinion. I really enjoy this, and I guess I'll say that I like Emma. I at least like watching her. I'm engaged with her. But if you kind of step back and just look at the things that she does, even though she has, I think, good intentions, she doesn't seem like the best of people. Would you agree with this, or do you think I'm off the mark? Would you like to defend Emma Woodhouse?
Well, I think Emma is such a great novel because it does take a character who is normally the villain in a Jane Austen novel. She's rich. She doesn't have to worry about getting married. She bothers other people. She kind of wrecks their life for a bit. But I think that the important thing about Austen is that she does have those good intentions, whereas a character like Caroline Bingley would be much more selfish and just really, out for herself. Whereas Emma, I think, does have a real concern that the people around her be happy. And I think that one of the great things about Anya Taylor-Joy as Emma is you see, she is a spoiled youngest child. She is, she does sometimes think of people as dolls to be played with, but she also, it opens with her embracing Miss Taylor, her governess who's getting married. And you can really see that emotion and that connection. She has a real ability to connect to people. And I think that you have to balance both the flaws of Emma, and she's a deeply flawed character, but also the virtues. I think that, for example, the Gwyneth Paltrow one tends to make her too virtuous. It tries to make her flaws too small to really bother, so that the Box Hill, where she insults Miss Bates, doesn't quite land as well. Yeah. Whereas, I think Romulan Gary and Anya Taylor-Joy, there's a real pain in Miss Bates when you see that, and you feel it. Like I saw it, I got to see it twice in theaters, and the first time was a preview screening, and the entire audience. I mean, a preview screening, you have to imagine that everyone there knows the novel, or at least knows another version. There was a huge gasp when she said only 3 at once, and I was like, well, this film is successful. It has showed those negative qualities of Emma, but it also, people were really happy at the end when she gets a happy ending. So I think it does that balance well. So I do defend Emma against, being, a villain. I think that the the musical actually played her up way too much as a villain. There's just too many things that she did it didn't give her enough virtues. But I think that Anya Taylor-Joy and the screenwriter really gave her both the flaws and the virtues that make her such a lasting character. And I think that is why this film really adds to the enrichment of the novel.
I find it really funny that there's a musical. There's actually a musical of Jane Eyre, and
it's the same guy who did the musical.
Well, I've never listened to it. I love Broadway. I'm a huge fan of Broadway, but I'm just so nervous to listen to it. But I guess I should just fall on my sword and listen to it and see. Maybe it'll be okay.
I would 100% recommend the musical of Jane Eyre. It is passionate.
Okay.
It also has humor, which I think the book does have. And it has a real interesting approach to the spiritual side. To me, now I have my own religion. I am a Christian, so I connect to those themes in the novel as well. And I think that the musical really honors that spiritual journey that Jane goes on from being this really cast down person who feels that God is against her. And she learns throughout that she can have a connection to faith and to her idea of God. And so the musical I would really recommend to any fan of the novel, but particularly someone who is interested in those spiritual journeys. I think that would be very enriching.
Okay, well, I'll do it then based off of your recommendation. That Box Hill scene, are you like me where you know it's coming and you're kind of really uncomfortable and you're waiting for it to happen, or are you just cool as a cucumber when that thing is going on?
Well, I don't. Well, my tension there is because I know it's coming next, which is the badly done scene.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I basically have accepted that I know Emma's going to screw up and just going to hurt Miss Bates. And so I'm not surprised or tense, but I know that I know that Emma doesn't like what she's done. Like immediately you can see on Anya Taylor-Joy's face that she's just, I should not have done that.
Yeah.
But then Mr. Knightley comes and he just lays into her. And that is what that makes me very tense, because it's, you love these characters. And even though they've had arguments before, this is a different quality. There's much more at stake. And so that's really where my tension in that scene comes from.
Do you think Emma deserves that sort of dressing down from Mr. Knightley, or do you think it's too heavy-handed?
I think she deserves a dressing down. I think that Mr. Knightley was motivated, partly by, jealousy and partly by fear. I mean, he's very jealous of Frank Churchill throughout, and I love the way they played that up in this version. So I would say that his intensity goes too far for what Emma needed, because as I said, Emma already realized she did wrong. She needed someone to tell her to acknowledge that, but I don't think she needed something as devastating, because it was really devastating. I mean, this one, they really show just how hurt she is and how she's weeping for days afterwards. So I think that she needed something, but Mr. Knightley, because he was motivated by other things, went to another level. And that it's that pain in both of them that I think is so engaging in that section of the movie.
Yeah. Now, one element that for however many times I've seen any adaptation of Emma, I always forget is coming, is the reveal of Jane Fairfax being secretly engaged with Frank Churchill. I don't know why, but I always forget about it. I'm always trying to figure out, why is Jane Fairfax acting this way? What's up with all of this? Which I guess is good that I forget this, kind of buries the lead. But afterwards, I rethink through the whole film and revisit what Frank Churchill has done, and I'm sort of astounded that Jane Fairfax would be with this type of person who kind of eggs Emma on and is flirting with Emma and all of this, which in this, one of the lines that I think really stands out for Jane, and I'm sure it happens with all these adaptations, but in this one, because I've just recently seen it, is when she begs off to leave early when they were in a house visiting, and she tells Emma something about, it doesn't seem like I'm suffering, but like I'm suffering internally. And so Emma, I think, quizzically considers this. I don't remember the exact line, but it's really well done. And so after that, once you get the reveal of Jane Fairfax's engaged to Church, like that, all comes in together of like, oh, clearly she was really suffering because she can't say anything and she's behind the scene, watching all this stuff happen between Frank and Emma. But yeah, what is it just me that I forget about that? I'm sure because you're the seasoned person, you know all of that, just like I would know everything with Jane Eyre coming through. But just what is your sense of that whole engagement and those two characters and Jane in general?
Jane is a fascinating character because she, in every other Jane Austen movie, she would be the heroine. She's poor. She has to marry a rich man, who is, seen as above her, but she has a moral character. She's very accomplished. She has all these skills and intelligence, and she would be the hero, but she's not. Emma's the hero. So I thought that it was incredibly amusing just how much Emma and Jane didn't like each other in this movie.
Yeah.
Because Jane just walks by her and says, I think I can remember the music, and then just launches into this Beethoven piece that's so showy and flashy. And I thought that was hilarious. I do always look for those moments of connection. And I feel like one of the few weaknesses of this film is Frank. I don't think he was particularly memorable in this one. He's just kind of there. So while he's important for the plot, I didn't really get engaged in that relationship where I have in other versions. So the Kate Beckinsale one has Olivia Williams as Jane Fairfax, and she's my favorite Jane Fairfax. She's just a phenomenal actress.
Yeah.
And they give several scenes where they really give you clues about the relationship, and if you go back, you can start to see those stolen moments between Jane and Frank. And so that relationship is, I think, the most interesting. In this one, you can see the little bits, but it's not. They don't really layer in extra moments to show that they're trying to hide their affection. They just sort of have everything really below the surface. So I don't know if I'm ever surprised anymore about it, but I would say that they're fun, really rich characters that add to the plot and Emma's development.
I didn't like this particular Frank Churchill. Well, maybe actually that was the point, to not really like him. But the actor who plays him played Kurragin, Anatole Kurragin, in War and Peace in a recent adaptation the BBC did that was 6 episodes long. And so that character is terrible over there. And so once I saw his face, I thought, oh no, I'm not going to like you, which I think is fine. We want to be more on Knightley's side anyways.
Was that the one with Lily James?
It is that one, yes.
Okay. I only saw the first episode of that, so.
Okay. Yeah, I just read it for the first time in this whole pandemic thing. So now I'm like more in tune with the characters. But after, I think I was reading it, and then I watched Emma, so it was kind of clear in my mind of who this guy was. I'm not sure. I don't have anything else. Are there any other parts or portions of this adaptation you'd like to talk about?
Well, I think I would like to highlight there is so much humor. You have Frank Churchill swinging Harriet around and almost hitting people. So there's that hilariousness. But you mentioned the dance, and I thought there's so much passion between Emma and Knightley there. My brother, who saw it with me the second time, said there's some serious gonna make out later in the movie vibes there. And I thought that was very appropriate because that's exactly what they do. This one, it really gets that romance between Emma and Mr. Knightley, and I think that was really satisfying because of their flaws, but then their journeys to becoming better people.
Does her nose bleed in the novel during the proposal? Okay.
No.
Has it ever bled in any other adaptations?
No, that's one of the very distinct fresh takes that they added.
I guess
but I think it worked pretty well.
Yeah. It does. Yeah, that scene, I think, also, it's got the heightened romance, but there's also, like, heightened comedy there, too, without it being slapstick, but just, like, what's being said, how the actors are engaging with each other. I really thought that was a unique scene as well. And for once, she I think, takes ownership of what she starts to grow into, for me, a better character, especially when she kind of apologizes to Mrs. Bates in giving that fruit basket and asks about Jane Fairfax. And then when she's the one to go up and basically get her friend proposed to. It was great to see her take that ownership, I thought.
Yeah, I thought that was a very nice theme. Although I think in the novel there was, Jane Austen was writing from the class structure of the Regency period, so I don't think she could have written that particular way. But she does write a reconciliation, a coming back together of Emma and Harriet, which I think the adaptation is springing from.
Mm-hmm. So 2 thumbs up from you?
Oh, yes. All the thumbs
and
I have.
And you've already pre-ordered it, is that true?
I haven't yet because of the whole Amazon situation and everything being locked down. So I don't know if I want to try and run out to the store and get it or if I want to order it from Amazon. But I will absolutely be getting it as soon as I can.
Sounds good. Before I leave you, this would be your chance if you would like to talk about Huntress's portrayal in the Birds of Prey film that has recently come out, because I think you've been itching to talk about that.
Oh, yes. Huntress being my second favorite character. I was actually really pleased with her portrayal. I wasn't the biggest fan of the film itself, just because I'm not a big Harley Quinn fan. But I thought that the moments that Huntress had, particularly her backstory and then her training, and then when she appears as this, lethal vigilante with arrows, and she's very cool, but she's also very isolated. I like the humor that they played up with her trying to practice her catchphrases. I thought that was very appropriate because she's always been a very cool, very competent character, but she's also never been good at connecting with other people. So I thought that was a really good way to dramatize that. And the backstory in particular really, I just flashed back to the Greg Rucka Cry for Blood miniseries that I think is just her best origin. And so before I saw the film, I thought that clearly these people have only ever read Harley Quinn comics. They've never read a single Huntress or Birds of Prey or Gotham Central or any of these comics. And I think I was wrong. I think they have read other comics. I don't think they've really captured the Birds of Prey comics, but I think they have captured Black Canary and Huntress pretty well. And I was very pleased with Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Huntress.
I think she's actually the one character that, well, besides Cassandra Cain, I guess we don't talk about her in Donovan's presence.
Oh my goodness.
I think the Huntress character, it was just interesting. Like, I wasn't expecting it. I loved, just because I had recently read and reviewed that comic, Cry for Blood, I loved that they did that backstory to her. But she just seemed, I don't know, her personality was not what I had expected when I think of Helena Bertinelli. So that's one that when I see it again, because I do want to see it again, I think I'll try to work out for myself. I do really like the actress, and I thought it was funny that she was trying to come up with catchphrases or, her own name or trying to get her name out, but people weren't allowing her to. But it was just a little more humorous than I would have expected. But I wonder if it's because Black Canary had very little humor with the exception of like kind of biting or sardonic humor. So I wonder if all of that went to her and they didn't want multiple serious characters, and that's why they lightened Huntress a bit. I'm not sure.
I think that's also because Harley Quinn herself is such a character of humor that you have to have the other characters match her. And I think that's you're right that if you had both Huntress and Black Canary being like super dramatic, super serious characters, you would have some difficulty distinguishing them. I mean, obviously the actresses are going to bring their own personality to it, but in terms of those sections of the film, how they feel to the viewer, they wanted to give different tones, and they didn't want both of those tones to be the serious. So they gave her that awkwardness. And I thought the awkwardness was really fun because I think a lot of Huntress's violence comes from that deep loneliness, that deep lack of connection. And it's one of the reasons I'm so excited for you to get to the Gail Simone things, because that is really her through line, is that connection to others and that failure to connect that Gail Simone just writes so well in The Birds of Prey.
Well, I can't wait, but I think it's a while. When is her first issue?
30 more issues or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, it wouldn't be so bad if I didn't have all these other things I have to get through, too, simultaneously. So,
yeah.
Well, Ian, thanks so much for coming on and chatting some Jane Austen and Emma and a little bit of Birds of Prey.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad we could get together to do this. Of course, I'm a longtime listener, and I very much appreciate your literature recommendations.
Well, I'm so glad. Yeah, so this is kind of that, it's a little side dish to my literature recommendations, which is great. Where can people, because I know they can, where can people find you and support you?
Well, I'm on the Batman Universe. I am one of the hosts of the Batman Universe comic podcast, and I write reviews. I'm currently writing reviews of Batgirl, which Stella and I both have expressed our opinions about. I'm on Twitter as IBM Miller, and I mostly tweet about my favorite character there, Stephanie Brown. So if you are a fan of Stephanie Brown, join me on Twitter.
And what are you currently doing with Stephanie Brown?
I'm rereading her Batgirl series because we're not getting any new comics for at least a couple weeks and probably longer. I thought now is a good time to reread her Batgirl series. So I will be tweeting about that, and you can join me and tell me how much she is awesome and how great Barbara Gordon is there.
Yeah, one of my favorite, if not favorite, runs of Batgirl, and that was when I said a sacrilegious thing, I suppose, in the eyes of Barbara Gordon fans, that I think Stephanie Brown is actually my favorite Batgirl, while Barbara Gordon is my, favorite character, period. But yeah, it's a great run. I remember really wanting Detective Nick and Barbara to get together and all the waffles. I mean, I remember that so clearly. It's a great time to read that because I think it'll bring a lot of joy to you as well as other people who read along with you.
That's my hope.
Okay, well, thanks again for coming on here.
Thank you, Stella.